morning, everyone. It's 7:30. It is Tuesday, February 1st. One down, 11 to go. We're here for the regularly scheduled City Council meeting. I would like to call this meeting to order. And we're going to begin with the Pledge of Allegiance, and then we will follow that with words of inspiration by Pastor Riggs. If you will come up here, and then everyone will remain standing for that. Thank you. Go, Chief.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
That's okay.
Thank you for this opportunity to be here with you today. Very few of my words are inspiring. So instead, I'll just pray to the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. My Father in heaven, may your name be greatly revered and honored in this city, this state, this country, and the whole world. Your name, God, is a strong and mighty tower. Just by speaking, you created the heavens. You hung the moon and the stars in the sky by commanding them to be there from nothing. There they hang on nothing, expressing your power and glory. The universe and all its expanse has been purposefully placed by you. You have named each star and galaxy and know them intimately. You give rain to water the earth and make it bring forth and sprout, giving seed to the sower and bread for the hungry. You provide food for all of your creatures on the earth and in the sea. What are we, God, that you are mindful of us? Yet you have made us a little lower than angels. You know the hairs of our head. There is not a word on our tongue or a thought in our mind that you do not know. These things are too incredible for us to understand. And yet, Father, we have all, like sheep, gone astray. We have all turned everyone to our own way. Instead of worshiping and serving you as the creator and sustainer like we should, we have all worshiped and served your creation instead of you. We've made idols out of food, our work, or our family, or even our country, our recreation. We have all looked to those as if they will satisfy our hearts. I know that we are guilty of rebelling against you, God, and are deserving of your judgment. And yet, God, in your great love, even while we were enemies of you, you sent your Son to suffer the judgment we deserve by dying on the cross. Then you raised your Son from the dead, proving that the sacrifice he paid for our sin was accepted by you. Thank you, God, for your amazing love that led you to sacrifice your only Son to save sinners. I thank you, God, that you call people to turn from their sin, to trust in Jesus, and to receive new life in him. Now, Lord Jesus, as you rule and reign in heaven, I ask for your kingdom to come and your will to be done in Clawson as it is in heaven. Give these representatives your wisdom. Help them know that you did not come to be served, but to serve and to give your life as a ransom for many. Help them realize that they are to be servant leaders and not lording leaders. Help them give one another the benefit of the doubt, to speak well of each other in public and in private, and do all they can to love their neighbor as themselves. Father, please help the people of Clawson see that our greatest need in all the world is not for our water lines to stop bursting, our basements to stop flooding, our schools to grow, or even for COVID to go away. Help us to see that our greatest need is you. I thank you, Father, that you hear me through your Son, and that you will answer my requests in ways that I would completely agree with if I knew everything that you do. In the name of the King of the universe, the coming judge of every person and the Savior of all who will believe, Jesus Christ, I pray. Amen.
Thank you so much. I failed to mention that Pastor Riggs is from the Central Oaks Community Church, and we do thank him for his words, and they were indeed inspiring. So thank you so much. First thing we're going to do now would be a roll call.
Mayor Milan.
I am here.
Councilmember Anderson.
Here.
Councilmember Sampson.
Here.
Councilmember Shepherd.
Here.
That is a quorum, Madam Mayor.
Wonderful. Next on the agenda would be approval of the agenda.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I would like to make a motion that we move the presentation by the Clawson Middle School robotics team right now to the first thing we do.
Okay.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Anderson.
Yes.
Mayor Milan.
Yes.
Councilmember Sampson.
Yes.
Councilmember Shepherd.
Yes.
So what we just did is changed the agenda a little bit, so you guys can give your presentation now, and you don't have to sit through a meeting unless you choose to, because we're so excited to see what you have to offer us today. So we'd like for you to come on up. Proclamation first or last? We'll do it last, right? Let's do the presentation first, and then we have a proclamation for you after the presentation. So again, any parents who want to capture this, feel free to come on up with them. You guys probably need to come up here. Make yourself comfortable, all the space is yours. If you need to move something, move it.
So let's turn it on, we're gonna show it off, so.
Yeah, I think I'll have to. Will it fall off you put on the desk?
Anybody who wants to see this, move on up here. We have standing room only. You can also stand up here, it's a perfect view.
There's an empty seat here.
Yeah, come on up. Dad?
You guys can kind of come in here and kneel down and walk for now.
That was brilliant.
Just go ahead.
Oh, yeah.
A little city humor there.
Can you take,
One kind of kneel down.
Turn your mic on.
turn it off? Can you take pictures? Nick, could you take pictures? Do you have something you could do? I'm right here, I got this. All right, never mind, you're not needed.
Is there something? I got it.
But you're appreciated still, Nick.
No, you're good.
So whatever you do the presentation, you can tell a little bit about your group and then tell what they've done, however you would normally.
Yeah, so this was definitely a pretty good year for us. We've been to states in the past a couple times, but this group, pretty much everyone in this group was new this year. And we definitely had our struggles in the beginning of the year, but we turned the whole thing around, ended up going from last place at one competition to second place in the next, qualifying for states, and then getting 11th out of 40 in states, which is pretty good for a small town like Clawson. So the guys are going to show off the robot here. The name of the game was to pick up those cubes and balls. They weigh different amounts, and then score them in this red thing. I don't know how well I can see. Go ahead and drive it. So a lot of success changing up the design after our first competition. Definitely improved some stuff. We added a bunch of sensors for some reliability and feedback to the drivers. Ended up being able to practice a lot more this competition than our normal competitions, and that really paid off this year. We went into the competition having fully programmed robots and just ready to go and compete and show off to all the other teams. And it was great to hear when we went to our one competition that, oh wow, that robot looks so good, or wow, that's amazing how well our robot was doing as soon as we got there. And that's something great to hear. When you work so hard on a thing like this. So I'm going to ask if the kids want to say anything about their experience, that they can come up. I know some of them spoke before at the school board meeting, so some of them might have some stuff to say.
About this whole robotics experience, I definitely have learned a lot from it, and from the beginning of joining, I've learned a lot more on how to problem solve with because at one competition our lift just completely broke in the middle of one of our games, and we problem solved and got it fixed. And I definitely can say, since I've joined robotics, I have made a lot more friends this year. And some kids I wouldn't know of that are in 7th or 8th grade, I've definitely become friends with as a 6th grader.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
So this is my first year doing robotics, but I am so amazed on how far we've gotten. this is one of the certificates that we got, and we got a trophy for being in second place. I have to say the experience was just amazing. It was fun. Everyone got to do something. There were so many things to do. Even a little bit after the first competition, like we took a break from robotics for a little while, and then from the second competition, we got ready for states. We prepped for hours, like every day.
Going into robotics, I didn't know a lot about what it would be like. If you asked me a couple years ago, never would I have guessed that I would be doing robotics today. And I'm really happy that I did choose to do it because I got a lot of new opportunities. And even if you're not good at one thing, there's still a lot of other things that you can do. So you really feel included and that everyone can fit in. And I made a lot of new friends, like a lot of people here did, and it just felt really nice. And everyone was included, and it was just really nice.
This definitely was a learning experience for me, because I already knew a bit about robots and like mechanisms, but I never knew that this much would cause me to get this far in life.
I've never been the most social person, and I joined robotics, and they made me join the presentation team, in which we take our robot and show it to these judges and get awards based on how well we can do that. And I've improved. I can talk to people much better now, so it's helped me a lot with my life.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
Robotics has definitely helped me do a lot of things. Like, I was on the PITS team, and it helped me do small things. Like, I never thought tightening screws would be more important. And, and I wouldn't be able to make it through robotics without these two coaches.
Anyone else?
This year for robotics, it was I loved working on stuff before robotics, and I always built stuff like a lot. I almost caught our house on fire once. Hey, throughout the robotics, it has taught me a lot of stuff about programming and that, which I already had messed with before, but it also helped me with wanting to do more with the stuff and kind of inspire me to keep going and keep trying to do more with building stuff. And thanks to the amazing coaches.
All right, just one last thing that I want to say. So in Clawson, everyone knows it as the little city with the big heart. But our goal is honestly to make it to make Clawson known for robotics as well. Like Mr. Carpenter said, when we were at one competition, I talked to one of the volunteers, and she said, "Oh, look how good Clawson is, look how good Clawson is." That's all that we heard was, how good is Clawson? So that's our hope, is to continue to inspire these kids every year with not just how to build a robot, how to public speak, how to do a ton of different things like they've mentioned. So yeah, it was a fantastic year. Thank you. And I just wanted to add one more thing. With our success this year, I wanted to try to extend Clawson's robotics-ness. We kind of got away from robotics in elementary. So as a STEM coordinator for the district, like kind of acting at the moment, I'm working towards getting elementary school back into robotics, trying to make possibly a STEAM camp in the summer that we can do. Maybe these kids can help volunteer to help kind of run it. Stuff like that to kind of get the community more involved in robots. So Yeah.
I think we should give a big round of applause for the two coaches.
Did anyone else want to speak that didn't? Don't go back to your seat and go, oh, I could have, or I should have. I was gonna. This is your opportunity, please.
Go ahead.
Well, I went into robotics because all my family members went into robotics, and I was actually really scared to go into robotics because I didn't know anything about programming or anything. But he helped me with that, and that's actually why I program now, and I'm planning to program in the future. I'm stuttering right now, but that's about it.
Yeah, I forgot to say this, but the coaches were so interactive, and even just at school, Mr. Carpenter does so much to help us out and give us the best experience that we can get.
At the beginning of robotics, I did not really know anything. When I got into robotics, I learned a lot of it. I gained a lot of experience from building the robot to going into the judging rooms to talk with the judges, and I think it has helped me very much with my social life.
Anybody else? We got most of you. Good job.
So going into robotics, I didn't know anything. So I learned a lot about building, and I made a lot of new friends. And when I was scouting and stuff, it helped build my confidence and stuff, talking to people I didn't know. And I also went on the presentation team once, but that also helped. And yeah.
Oh, yes, and probably would help too. So we wanted to present you with the proclamation for your hard work. So I'm going to read the big words because my eyes are old and, I squint. So this proclamation is congratulating the Clawson Middle School Robostangs robotics team. Whereas the Clawson Robostangs robotics first tech team was led by coaches David and Stephen Carpenter. Clap. And whereas the diverse team of, stand up when I call your name, Aiden Williams, Carter Bean, Megan Kozmowski, August Ostrowski, Emmeline Van Nostrand, Miller Armstrong, Clay Beck, Savannah Nass, Jameson Crody, Rose Drotar, Tyler Knock, Matthew McLean, Zachary Campbell, Cameron Marvin, Vincent Nader, Isaac Burbridge Jones with a head injury, Eddie Detloff, Gideon Schneider, Elizabeth Schneider, included boys and girls from every grade, and whereas the Robostangs overcame early failures to completely rebuild and refocus, which led them to an 11th place finish in the state of Michigan, the best finish in the decade of the Carpenter brothers have been coaching. Clap. Whereas students contribute in various team roles, including strategy, build, programming, logistics, communications, marketing, and the actual driving of the build. And whereas the Clawson Robotics team embodies the success of STEM programming that teaches innovation, creativity, critical thinking, problem solving, and collaboration among many other skills proven to lead to success. Now therefore be it resolved by the City Council of the City of Clawson congratulates Clawson Robostangs robotics team on their remarkable accomplishment and look forward to their continued success in the future. Clap.
Here, you guys, look this way. I want to see everybody's face. Come on. There you
If
go.
we could get everyone to scrunch in for a photo, it would be great. So everyone gets one of these. Not every middle schooler gets this. Illustrious leader. Could you put somebody tall? Who doesn't have a proclamation? One of them has one.
All the extras go to the coaches and then
Megan, I have to be able to see your face. You cannot hide behind Miller. Don't let her hide.
You guys want to get on the stage? Yeah.
Taller than me. Yeah, that might. Yeah.
Come on over, Bruce.
All right.
Cluster to the middle.
Ready?
Game face?
Wait.
Game face?
Turn it, it's upside down, the certificate.
That's right. Are you serious or not?
Go Robo-Stangs!
I can't see. I hope it's not blurry.
Oh, don't worry, I got it.
Oh, did someone get one from us?
Anybody blank?
On our camera? Did you get one? Okay, cool. Thank you.
One more, here we go. Put one or two in a newsletter or something.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you so much. Each one of you children did an exceptional job at speaking. I'm so proud of you. Thank your parents for allowing you to come today. You do not have to sit through the rest of the meeting unless you choose. And ladies and gentlemen, this is why we're here. This is why we do what we're here to do. This is Clausen. So
I would have made him stay, just so you know.
they will never serve on the fire department.
Many of them are scouts. So, all I can tell you, I made all my scouts sit through a
Yes,
whole
you did.
meeting.
But the Dairy O is closed, so there's nowhere to bribe them with.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
They don't have any of that. Vincent, you didn't dent the table, did you?
Oh, no.
He's very rough and tumble.
And we should be saying happy birthday to Troy.
Troy, it's your birthday?
Maybe.
Happy birthday, Troy! Everyone say happy birthday to Troy.
Birthday, Chief.
Okay, so it's back to business now. Oh, yeah. So the next thing on our agenda would be public comment for items on the agenda. If you're here and you would like to speak for an item that's on the agenda, please come forward, give your name and your address. Try and keep it to 3 minutes, and thank you.
Good evening. I can't compete with that. That was great. Regarding the minutes, this is Donna Hughes, 476 East Baker. Regarding the minutes of the January 18th City Council meeting, I thank you, Mr. Clerk, for including the brief description of the resident comments. That was much appreciated. I will continue to ask that presentations by city departments be written, at least an outline, and submitted ahead of time for council packets. This written information could then be referenced in the minutes of the meeting in which the presentation is given. Thank you.
Thank you.
Name's Walter Bills, live on Grant Avenue. So last night I was watching the meeting on the millage, and I thought I'd throw my 2 cents in. Obviously, doing nothing's not an option. And, you know, we spent 35 years in Royal Oak. And to be honest with you, the Clausen services, the Clausen City services, make Royal Oak look sick. They do. They're far and above better. And so I think, it seems to me the prudent thing to do would be to, I mean, you have to replace what is gone or going to be gone. You don't have a lot of time to do it. I think you have to do at least that, and getting cute and going up to the 5.638, the max or whatever like that, you're taking a chance on people getting ticked off and just saying no to the whole thing. But it was brought up last night as far as like rollbacks and stuff like that. I don't see it would be in a hard sell at all to increase the 3.6 to at least make it where it is 3.6 over a period of time. You know, whether that's rollbacks or, as you were saying, inflation or, you know, stuff like that. You know, whether that's 4.5 or whatever it is, I think that's a pretty easy sell if they know it's just to maintain because of what's going on. But if you get cute, I don't know. The other thing is that as far as the time, I mean, if you do something like 2 years, I think it's, and then all of a sudden 2 years later you're coming back to all these people and saying the same thing, I don't think that's going to go over very well. I think what the finance manager said yesterday makes a lot more sense, 5 or 10 years. But I just think if you get it too short, and if you do get together and you decide you want, you know, that we need to do this, we need to do that, I think there's other ways to do it. I mean, I think you can do a bond, or I don't know, maybe you can do another millage, you know. But at least you'll have time to talk about it and all that. But so anyway, those are just a couple things I was thinking about. So thank you.
Thank you.
Well, good evening. My name is Jan Bills, and that was my husband, and we live in or on Grant Avenue. So first of all, I just want to say, and I'm happy to see that Kelly's here, because I just want to thank her for her professionalism. She's been through a lot these past couple years, and I just admire how she's handled it. And we hire her for a reason. She is an expert in her field. With all due respect, none of you are an expert in what she does. So I think you should stay in your lane, take the advice from the person we have hired and we pay to do her job. She's very well versed in what she does. I echo what my husband says about this whole thing, pants on fire. Last week it was pants on fire about our water bill. Now it's pants on fire about a millage. You know the right thing to do, Madam Mayor, and I hope that you take the advice that our finance director gave last night and move forward and quit playing games with the residents of this city. Thank you.
Thank you.
Andrea Hodges. First of all, I want to talk about that robotics. Did you know the bond that you passed for the school district is actually going towards a new robotics lab? They're putting a couple $1 million into it, which is huge, because the RoboStings, they were in this old classroom where they have been working. So with the bond passing, they're getting an upgrade too, which is I'm so happy to hear. The other thing, I did email you guys later today. I have a couple of questions I was hoping that you guys could ask for me when the presentation of the water rates. And the questions are, what percentage of the water rates goes to capital improvements of the system? What percentage goes towards wages, and does that reflect the wages for the personnel in the water department? How did you calculate the depreciation of the system? Because really, gosh, you know how old our lines are? They were installed about 1923, so I didn't know if they depreciate those lines, because I didn't know if there was anything left to depreciate. Another thing is that I would suggest that you guys read the 2009 water rate study. It has a lot of information in it, and it also breaks down on how the water rate is actually calculated. It gives you the formula, what goes into it, kind of like the commodity charge and all that. Another thing you should look into is what the state of Michigan allows you to put into that water rate. There's the commodity charge. It also includes like a capital improvement kind of thing you could put in there. So actually, if you know that, you could start putting some in there to help improve our infrastructure in the water rates. Another thing another one that you guys should read is the 2018 water resiliency study. Probably got the name wrong. That is another one that will tell you a lot of good information. For example, for our lines, we only replaced about 20% of all of ours, and a lot of them are 6 inches, which you need to really upgrade to 8-inch. So it breaks it down in that one. It tells you, what needs to be done. And the only other thing I was hoping that you could find out is I would like to know who the water operator in charge of the city of Clawson is that is listed with the state of Michigan. And thank you so much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak?
Hi.
Hi.
Erin Medman on Elmwood, and I'm trying to stay in my lane, as said before, but I also wanted to add a little bit of perspective from me on the millage. And I know that last night things were discussed about home buying, and how that might affect things. I know Samson mentioned it before. And just to give perspective, Clawson is one of the higher millages, and I wanted you to take that into consideration, considering when buyers choose homes, they choose it based on what they can afford. So, I know that it's a hard job, whatever it is, you decide it's hard. Another perspective, there's also a website if you ever wanted to go on. The Michigan State Treasury has a website that you can go to and compare millage rates. So, you can even put in the city and pick the school district and price of home, and it'll pop out like what your taxes are for the year. Clawson right now is 48 is the millage. Whereas, Berkeley, when we think about that in terms of homes and values and being competitive with other markets, that's important to the city, right? So Berkeley is 37, we're at 48. So I know that there's a lot that you're taking into consideration. I just thought that was important to point out because we do have wonderful services, and I don't want to lose any of them. But that's not necessarily something everyone looks at when they're purchasing a home. They look at what's going to be, my mortgage every month, and that's put into that. With that said, I know I watched some of your interviews with the managers, and there was one that talked about grants and the opportunity to look for grants. So as a voter, my thoughts would be, well, what other things have they explored in terms of, filling these voids? And have they explored grants? I know that there's a grant with the water commissioner now. Other cities have pursued. I don't know if we have pursued those things, but I think that there's a lot of creative ways that we can fill certain voids. That leads me to saying the more information we have as voters about what this is paying for, the better I think we all are. I think that a lot that the school board did was inform voters on specifics. They had a map. I know you guys can't do all that, but just giving us the more information you can give voters to make that decision, the better off we all are. And my only other questions were about the short-term rental inspections. I noticed that was on your agenda. Just curious if these questions can be answered. Wondering, I'm sure it's the building that oversees it. Wondering what the criteria might be for that. Also, cost versus revenue. Is it something that's said to bring in revenue for the city, or is this something that the city is seeing needs to be done based on, these homes that are left, decrepit or whatever? So just wanting more information about that. So thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else?
Hi. Dr. Jessica Back. I live in the city. I'm not going to share my address since it's streaming. I wanted to kind of kick off of what was just discussed. For those of you who don't know me, I spent 9 years on the Clawson Public Schools Board of Education, 2 of those years as president. So I understand what it is you have to do, and I understand how you have to function, and I understand the job that you are required to perform. And frankly, I'm disappointed because the job here is to come to consensus, and that hasn't been happening. And if you're not coming to consensus, you're not doing the job right. You're not doing the work right. And frankly, as a city, as a citizen of this city, seeing a discussion about millage coming up when I'm also seeing dysfunction at the board level is a little disconcerting. I think you're going to have a hard time getting people to vote yes, because you have a lot of work in front of you to make sure that you are educating the voters of what that money will go to, and that we have confidence that you're going to use it in the way you have said, and that it's appropriate, and that it's going to be that you are doing the job that you are assigned to, which is the fiduciary role of the city. I was on the Clawson board when we went through our most recent millage, and I was part of that education piece, and it's hard work. And frankly, I'm not sure right now by what I've seen whether you guys are up to the role. So it's time to do better. It's time to put petty squabbles behind you, and it's time to start coming to consensus. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak for items on the agenda? Going once, going twice. Okay, thank you. We will close public discussion at this point, and we will move on. Let's see. Where are we? We already approved the agenda. Yes, that's where we are. Page next. So we're going to have a presentation by our interim Department of Public Works Superintendent, Trevor Zablocki, on water, I'm not even going to say rates. I'm going to say water issues because it's going to encompass a little different, and I think he's going to be asking for help from our esteemed financial director, Kelly Rao, at some point, but I'll let you guys do your whatever. Yes.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So yes, it said in the agenda it'd be about rates. I'm gonna be honest, I had absolutely nothing to do with setting those rates. I can't answer much. So for the most part, I would rather if you guys could ask me the questions that you would like answered, and I will do my absolute best to answer them, if that works for you guys.
Go ahead.
Can he answer Mrs. Hodges' questions?
If he knows what they are.
Yeah. Can you ask the questions so we don't mess them up?
Well, I'll go ahead and
Yeah,
I got them
You got them on the email?
So what is the percentage of the water rates that goes to capital improvements?
Could not answer that.
What percentage goes towards wages?
He's not going to answer that either. So
Does
let's
that
let Kelly
reflect the
come.
wages? Oh, just might throw them out, so.
You can throw them out. I'll tell you if I can
Yeah,
answer.
So, how did you calculate the depletion of the system? I'm not going to be honest with that. How did you derive what these rates were? Okay, Kelly, thank you. All right, so first question.
So first two questions, percentages, I would have to go back and calculate that. It's not based on a percentage, it's based on what the council adopted within the budget on the rates. The depreciation is prepared based on GAAP and GASB, required. We have a huge list of water and sewer assets, so those are depreciated every year. Next question.
And then what was, let's see, how did you derive what these rates were?
That was based on budgeted request, previous rates, what was recommended by the Water Resource Committee, SACWA.
Southeast Oakland County.
Thank you.
Water Authority.
And GLEWA, Great Lakes Water Authority.
The second, oh, yeah. And what percentage goes towards wages, and what does that reflect the wages for personnel in the water department?
That would be based on the salaries for those staff members that work for the water and sewer department, and that percentage I would have to get back with you.
How many people we got working in water and sewage?
Excuse me?
How many people do you have working in water and sewage?
I believe right now on payroll it is 3. I think we're at 3 right now. But it doesn't necessarily mean 3 people get paid out of that, depending on what they do that day. If someone works in water, then it's coming out of water.
All right, so there was a presentation that was sent in one of the emails regarding roads, and it also included water lines, is that right? That was from August, I want to say, August 4th?
Oh, that was the capital improvement?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So what's happened with that? Is there anything that's been developed within the department?
As far as capital improvement, I actually had a meeting today with AEW. We put together I believe it was a 5-year plan.
Okay.
They're going to come back with estimates on that I will have in the CIP.
Okay. So, and do we need to, I would prefer that you guys are the experts for that and prioritize where those are. Do we have a list of what those may be now on what's the highest priority, how much is that going to cost, what's it going to take, and then have a schedule based off of that for the CIP?
So that will be part of the CIP plan.
Yeah.
As we work through the plan with Giffords Webster, every department will get together and rate each one as high priority. Each one is, if there's budget to cover any of those capital improvements and so forth.
Okay.
So there's a rating schedule for each capital improvement item. So that will be prepared, it will be submitted with the budget. We'll have sessions with council, sessions with department heads.
Okay, so that's just, but we're not just talking what the dollar value is, it's the plan itself, right?
Correct.
Okay, so that.
It'll be a very detailed plan.
Okay, so that, while I want to see what the hierarchy of the highest priority are, there may be some things that could be done in parallel or in tandem, right?
Correct. So some jobs may be strictly water line.
Mm-hmm.
Some jobs may be water line and road. And you need to plan that so that you're not digging up a water line and then, or putting in a new road, and then 2 years later, you're digging it up for sewer water.
Okay, the other part of that is that, what does that require for man hours?
As far as planning it out? Or?
Yes, and whether or not you have the man hours, do you need more man hours? How is that incorporated?
Everyone needs more man hours.
Oh, I understand that, but that goes back to
Yeah.
what we're trying to figure out, right? So what is it that, as you're going through this process, right? I mean, I guess we could all say we're understaffed, but at the same time, what does that entail when you're looking at the hierarchy of these projects?
So there are studies done by AEW that we have had done, and we have scheduled to have more done, and we base a lot of it off of how things grade out.
Okay.
So a majority of that work is done through that, and you take that information, combine it with real world, what is happening. For instance, Royal Oak wants to redo Rochester Road.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, it might be that water main is also in dire need to be replaced. That would be the time to do it. So you have to kind of look at what you have going on, what is priority, and we figure out a way to get it put in.
Okay. So in doing that, you can address what areas of need we may be lacking in expertise, who we need to rely on. I don't know much about it, quite honestly, right? So, if there's something that requires certain type of testing, going in through and using video, not surveillance, but video monitoring, things like that, right? Those are all those things that are and we have experts that we have now, or do we already have?
So we have the capability and certified employees who can go in and camera a sewer and inspect it. But the amount of time that takes to do the whole city, that's outside of our scope. That would be something we would have to contract a company to come in. And part of my CIP is actually going to be a 5-year plan of having a company go through, clean and camera all of our sewers, so we can then come up with a plan for sewers.
Okay. So is there a process that's also going to be incorporated in the CIP on identifying that?
Correct.
On how you find out who those people are that we need to bring in?
So we would get bids.
Okay.
And then go from there.
The initial CIP plan would be like an estimate,
Sure.
whether we get a bid to get that estimate. And then once it's finalized and approved and budgeted, then we would go out for bid and get that additional detail.
Okay, but the devil's in the detail on where the cost is, right? So you can have,
We can get an estimate.
Okay. I guess there was one other question. So who do we have that's registered with the state?
That is an excellent question that I'm going to find out first thing tomorrow.
Okay.
I was registered as the alternate, but that needs to be updated.
What does that entail? Is that special training, special hours or education? What is
You have
that?
to have certain licenses and be registered with the state.
Okay.
Does anyone else have any questions for either of our professionals standing before us regarding this issue?
I have one more thing to bring up. In June, we were awarded a grant for a water rate study. So I guess they decided we ended up going out for quotes for water and sewer rate studies, and we now have 3 quotes. So I anticipate in an upcoming agenda, you will receive those quotes. And I do suggest we do that. It'll look for 5 years for water rates and sewer rates.
Have we done that in the past? Or
Yes.
is it, how long ago, do you know?
2008, it's been a while.
Okay,
It's been too long.
okay. Great, that should help solve some of the questions that are floating around out there right now. Anything else either of you have to add? We're good, everyone here? Okay, thank you for your time.
Sure, I'll have more later.
I'm sure you will, which is fine.
Thank you.
because we want to have reason to come back, right? So I'm going to circle back because in our moving of items on the agenda, we did not approve the consent agenda. Unless we did, and I just don't remember, but we didn't. No. I was like, something was missing here.
Moving the presentation around kind of made.
Yeah, it did. So just bear with us for one moment. So we're going to go back to item number 7, which is consideration of approving the following consent agenda. Item A, minutes of the regular city council meeting held on Tuesday, January 18th, 2022, as presented. Item B, minutes of the special city council meeting held on Wednesday, January 19th, 2022, as presented. Item C, minutes of the special city council meeting held on Thursday, January 20th, 2022, as presented. Item D, January 2022 department report. Item E, list of bills as presented in the amount of $1,763,540. Sorry, I can't do this. $1,763,549.22.
Mayor, I move the consent agenda be approved as presented.
I second it.
Roll call. Oh, any discussion?
Yeah.
No, there's no discussion on consent agenda. I got this one down. Yay. But
I'll have to vote no. I mentioned it to you last night about them too. Did you change them?
You told me you were going to tell me what you wanted to change. I never, you said.
No, just remember it was, you have 2 7s on that, 2CM-007.
So he called it a typo he saw in the minutes, so I'll go back. I didn't do it because I thought you were going to email it to me, but I'll go in and do it. That's fine.
the nerve of
Thanks for bringing that up again.
having a typo. The nerve.
I know, it happens. No,
I know.
you copy and paste a lot of stuff
It
when you're
happens
doing
to
that
all of us.
stuff, so.
I'm-
And which one was it?
kidding, so.
I don't know,
it's fine.
I was expecting.
It's regular meeting. All the numbers are taken. Well, we have a 7, and then we have a 7 again, and then we have an 8.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Okay,
So,
we'll trust that you will take
No,
that
I'm-
for our records.
the note is being made.
Thank you. And then roll call, please.
Mayor Milan,
Yes.
Councilman Sampson,
Yes.
Councilmember Shepherd,
Yes.
Councilmember Anderson,
Yes.
approved.
Okay, great. Now we're going to go to a public hearing. We're going to have a public hearing on an ordinance to govern short-term rental units. Mr. Nujai?
I think you probably need to open the public hearing.
Oh, sorry. I hereby open public hearing for rental units.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of council. This is, as we discussed last time, I wanted to bring a couple of these ordinances to you governing, in this particular case, short-term rentals. Obviously, we see a proliferation of those all throughout the country, and Clawson is no stranger to those, to these short-term rentals. This ordinance seeks to basically have a system of inspections and a registration system, and it deals with sanctions if you don't do so. It's a proposed ordinance, obviously. This will ultimately be your ordinance. So as such, if you, depending on what the conversation, your thoughts are on the matter, we're either going to adopt it this evening after the public hearing, or you may have suggestions, comments, whatever it may be. I'll obviously be taking copious notes. Sometimes when we do this, the ordinance drafting can be an exercise in attempting to read your minds without having first had a conversation. So I look forward to your comments, and obviously that of the public as well. We'll be taking copious notes, and hopefully we get to wherever we need to go so that we have this ordinance.
Okay.
So,
I got a question for you.
Yes, sir.
Back in 19 and early 20, we started doing this with Albus and Irwin. And we had a citizens committee. We had, Sue Phillips was on it. And it just got dropped by the wayside because of the changes. Why don't we start with that same committee so they feel like they're part of it?
Certainly entirely your option, your choice.
They were here for meetings and then we quit doing it. And they did spend a lot of time, so I think they should have their shot at it.
okay, so I'm fine with that. If the people who were on that committee are still interested in serving, or if they have some kind of notes they'd like to share with us, that would be great. Otherwise, then we're looking for people who want to serve in that capacity again, which we could probably find, because this is something that's probably on a lot of people's radar. So who's going to take responsibility for that, for contacting those people?
We could do this part as administration. I'm happy to do it.
Okay, great.
Absolutely.
Thank you. So that means we're going to, does anyone else have any comments or concerns? Does anyone from the public have any comments or concerns regarding short-term rental units?
I have a question.
You have to come to just come so we can hear you, please, Erin. Thank you.
Okay, so I know I kind of addressed this a little bit in my opening, but I was wondering if you could maybe go over and define what you mean as short-term rental. Are we talking, a year or less? Are we talking Airbnb kind of thing? And by that, I would be interested in seeing the actual ordinance and the criteria, and also wanting to know if we're letting a certain percentage. If it is an Airbnb, are we doing a percentage? And is there, transparency in where those might be for residents of the city? Those are my
Perfectly valid questions.
Oh. Erin, would you be interested in being part of the committee? Yeah, no pressure.
Oh, come on, there's a lot of pressure.
I don't know what the committee entails, but you can definitely reach out to me and we can discuss that. Obviously, I have a thing for real estate and I'm interested in know a little bit of background to it. So, yeah, feel free to reach out.
Will do. Will do. And to answer your question, so the obviously the ordinance, as you'll see, it is in the agenda. The proposed ordinance that says, as I indicated earlier, it is an exercise in attempting to find the mind of both the community and council as well. The way we define short-term rentals in this case is any dwelling or condominium or portions thereof in which an owner does not reside that is available for use or is used for accommodations or lodging of guests, paying a fee or other compensation. Now, this is the important part, per period less than 30 consecutive days. Obviously, anytime we have the month as the measuring unit, we enter into more regular leases, right? Our typical leases, and those are governed separately.
as the other ordinance that council obviously had the first reading last time around. So that's the definition. I think the suggestion actually is great. I think, you know, because it deals with an aspect of, I'm going to call it business legal, though perhaps, you know, the term should be loosely used. It deals with an aspect of business where more than the average business person is engaged in, that regular members of our city, residents, homeowners, and such are engaged in. I think it makes perfect sense that, you know, it go perhaps above and beyond just, you know, council, and we have more of a community input because the community is involved. So I think that's a great suggestion. And since they placed you on the spot, they put you on the spot, I'll reach out to you and, of course, all our prior members, so.
It was a question. It wasn't a putting your husband.
We put you on the spot.
I mean, I was the mayor.
So, is it okay if I follow up? Okay, so did you, I didn't see the ordinance in the agenda, maybe I'm sure I just overlooked. Was there a percentage that you were kind of proposing in the ordinance of like a percentage of homes in Clawson? I know that sometimes in like, you know, apartment communities and stuff like that, they'll allow a certain percentage to be like rentals. Are we going to max it out at a percentage?
Be able to, well, no, I certainly did not propose that. I don't think.
No, that's not in here.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, that I do know.
Absolutely.
I would never propose that. We would engage, what we would be asking and engaging ourselves in is in a situation where we tell a portion of our residents that they may be able to lease out their homes for an Airbnb and a portion that they would not. It's a non-starter, I think. We can, obviously, council may, in its, you know, ultimate wisdom, decide that, no, we don't want this, or no, we're perfectly fine, because obviously state law comes into play here as well. We do have some rules that are, you know, they come in and we are regulating at the margins, but obviously council may decide that, no, it's not an area that we want to legislate in. So there's many options, but I think, I think that there wouldn't be a way to do that concerning the short-term rentals.
Right, okay, because they'd have to register, right? So
yeah, registration is a different concept, obviously. Registration here, you know, and again, council may, you know, I'm speaking for myself, pursuant, like, you know, just from a legal perspective. Registration makes sense. Obviously, we require all sorts of businesses to register, right? So we have an idea what happens, and inspections make sense because we would want to ensure that, you know, the units that are out there being leased and the people and the residents that come in are you know, they're doing so under appropriate conditions, and council and its authority to legislate pursuant to health, safety, welfare has the ability to do so, to regulate, to monitor, and ensure everybody compliance with the rules, compliance with all our codes that we have in effect in the city, and it is appropriate that we do so. I believe.
yes, I you know, and I'm not going to deem one way or another on how I might feel about those. I have family members who own them, but I do know that communities around us have had some issues, and of course, on Facebook you hear the squeaky wheel, right? But just making sure we have a way to address city, you know, citizens in our city and what they might find frustrating about having the turnover is important, I think. And you said dwelling, right? So that excludes commercial. So we're only talking residential. Okay. Yeah. Looking forward to you reaching out because we could talk forever. Okay.
So, Mr. Nishai, you mentioned that, well, it says that this is for owner occupied, or sorry, owner does not reside. What about people who just run out their place for a week or a weekend repeatedly, because that's just as annoying potentially for residents? And I think that's our full concern here, right? People who come in short-term may not have the same courtesy to the neighbors who are there every day, all day. And how do we govern that as well?
Yeah, we certainly could. No, it is not here. I did not, you know, consider that as part of it. We dealt specifically with non-owner occupied. But certainly, if that's council's wish, if that's the direction that we give, and then of course after, you know, the committee does its work, absolutely we can modify it.
Okay, I'm hereby asking, I don't know what anyone else thinks, I would like that included. I think it makes sense to have that included.
Certainly.
I think we'll have more people who are owner occupied who will open this up this possibility up to people. And I don't know how big of a draw Clawson is for people to come in and stay, but it is centrally located, and, you know, on big weekends or big activities in this area, it could be a draw. And I would hate, I just would never want a neighbor to be penalized for someone's, you know, ability to make a buck, you know, and then us not have a way to govern that. I don't think that's wise. I don't think a non-owner occupied home is more important to monitor than an owner occupied home, because the potential problems are the same. So, thank you.
My question was, when you read them, did they cover that concern you had in your neighborhood?
No,
The 30-day won't cover it?
no, because it's a rental. No, it doesn't cover that. My concern last week was individuals who rent to multiple people. So I did studies with other communities, and then that would be called a boarding house.
Right.
And many communities, I found 3, all Michigan, that stated more than 2 people that are not related to you that you rent a home to would constitute a boarding house.
Yeah, that there's a reason you probably found very few communities doing it. We have I presume now it's probably old law, but nonetheless good law that impairs our ability to define such relationships because it was associated. Well, anyways, so I think to keep it short and sweet, I think there's good reason why you don't find a whole lot of communities that do that.
Well, it didn't look really long.
I don't mean it that way. I mean it in the sense that we have some case law out there that that reflects negatively about those kinds of ordinances. But again, if council's wish is that we look into that area, I'm certainly happy to do so and bring back obviously any and all information.
So I think we discussed it last week, and you were going to do that. Right?
Yeah, I did not.
It's not part of this.
It's not part of it.
Yeah, I didn't anticipate it, but you brought it up, and thank you for bringing it up because I don't want it to go to the wayside. Mr. Hara.
Thank you, Nate Hara from Park Drive. Good evening. Madam Mayor, I just would like to ask a couple of questions, if possible. How did this? It's just a little bit confusing me. How did this get onto the City Council agenda? Who put it on there? And is it by any chance possible for things like these ordinances to come through the Planning Commission? It sort of surprised me that it was on this meeting's agenda instead of the Planning Commission. I think Aaron is also kind of surprised in a way. So
why is that?
Maybe it should just come to the Planning Commission that is in charge of the ordinances.
Why do you think so?
Well, it incorporates everything with the rest of the ordinances for the city.
Yeah, I think you're slightly incorrect with respect to
Sure.
that. It's not Planning Commission. This is not, certainly there are certain aspects that could come to planning when we're talking about issues such as this. But no, council obviously is the ultimate authority, actually, pardon me, not the ultimate, the authority concerning an ordinances such as this.
No disagreement. It ultimately would come to the council, but usually it would come through the...
They're a first, they're first, last, and everything, kind of like the love song when it comes to this particular topic.
First, last, and everything.
Yes. Yeah. So in other terms, what I'm saying is, Planning Commission doesn't have original jurisdiction about this issue. So that's why it comes to council.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
My pleasure, yeah. A perfectly valid question. Again, I'm not quarreling, I'm only quarreling with the conclusion, not necessarily the question. The question is perfectly valid, so I thank you for it.
Yeah. From my perspective, maybe not even as a planning commissioner, but just as a citizen, it seems to me it would be very efficient to have these meetings at City Council, with the understanding that ordinances and things like this were run through the Planning Commission to vet them and to have input and to have any kind of recommendations that could be efficiently put together in support of the ordinance, and then it would come here, and relevant questions that anyone up here may be asking could have been vetted, and answered, perhaps ideally in advance, to the point where you wouldn't even have to ask the question.
But Mr. Hara, you're speaking with respect to an idealized version of how it ought to be. And actually, I may not quarrel with you. As to how it ought to be, you're probably right. As to how the law works in this particular case, both of these bodies, both the Planning Commission and the City Council, are bodies with limited jurisdiction. And the jurisdiction comes from the Planning Enabling Act, Zoning Enabling Acts, things of that nature. And none of those enabling acts afford you that kind of authority. So while it may make sense, logically speaking, unfortunately, the law is not logical, so we have to follow the mandates. And the mandates tell us that this is the body where we go to.
And so I ask again, who made the decision to bypass the planning commission for this particular issue?
But there's no bypassing. That's what I mean. It should have never come to you. It will never come to you.
Could it have gone to them? Is it something that could be brought up? Is that what, are you saying that there's something with this type of issue that does not belong in planning?
It doesn't belong in planning.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it's, planning deals with, we're dealing with, zoning based. We're talking about rentals, it would never come to you. You have no authority for it, meaning the body, not you, obviously, but the body would have no authority to hear the issue.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
But in fairness,
But there's, I'm sorry.
the rest of his question was, how did this come before council?
Oh, it's simple. So, as part of, well, I'll tell you the original sort of history. Over, throughout time, in my office, in our office, all of us as attorneys, we're constantly scanning our code of ordinances. We're constantly scanning our, charter, we can't really do a whole lot, unfortunately, but our code of ordinances, and we see a lot of gaps, and we see a lot of developments. And we see, at the same time, we're part of, Michigan attorneys, municipal attorneys of Michigan. All of us share information with respect to ordinances and proposed ordinances and that make sense for our communities based on the problems that we see, obviously Michigan Municipal League, things of that nature. And as part of, I think, the a conversation that we had with council, maybe a presentation that did with council a couple of years back now, I indicated a series of ordinances, based on gaps that I noted in our code of ordinances. And these rentals, inspections, rentals overall were one of my concerns because we have nothing on the books. And I thought that based on the kind of community, like scanning sort of the community that we are, small enough as we are, but I think the mayor is correct that we are a centrally located a place with a lot of, where people have a lot of desire to, there's a lot of rentals here, there's a lot of short-term rentals. I think in my mind it was important for us to at least have an idea, have an inspection to ensure the pursuit of health, safety, and welfare. And those considerations, council would be legislating, even if it were around the margins. So that based on those conversations that now I think are a few years old, as part of our ordinance that we bring as just a general rule, a general concept, I brought this ordinance. So I brought it, added it to council first with last meeting's original ordinance with respect to inspections on rentals, this time around short-term rentals.
Thank you so much.
Oh, of course, thank you.
Can I not to take over the whole meeting here. Well, I wasn't necessarily confused why it was on here, because I get ordinances, law, whatever, that's here. But I do agree with him on the way that commission can discuss the intricate plays of what a short-term rental might be and how it might affect Clawson as a, master plan overall community. With that said, I know that City Council in the past has asked for Planning Commission's opinion or, and I think it would only be to the city's benefit to have maybe Planning Commission along with our, city planners kind of go over things and kind of maybe put things in a package. That's just my thoughts. Do with it what you want.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree. I don't think you'll find me personally, or I presume anyone here for that matter, disagree with the logic of that. But obviously, we can sit here and get to the logic of any topic and agree ultimately. But as to whether we have the authority or property to do so, that gets a little trickier. I think the committee probably in this case, even though I agree with you again, I think having a committee do this kind of work to be the sort of the liaison, because I think that's what we're asking for a committee to be, or a group of people to be a liaison with, and to solicit the opinions of the community, because it's the community that one way or another will be affected. I think that makes perfect sense.
Well, and that's why we have public hearings that are published in the newspaper, so people can come and have their input.
So, speaking of this public hearing, would anyone else like to speak on this matter?
Madam Mayor, I just want to mention, I think brought up the last time regarding state legislation regarding prohibition, or communities to prohibit them from allowing Airbnb. Yeah. So again, it goes back to what you were saying. I think that's, I don't know where the legislation is. I knew that the House had voted and approved it in October, but I don't think the Senate took it up. But it's still on the agenda, I imagine, in the next legislation. So I think we need to get in front of it. And if we can incorporate that for Airbnb, VRBO, whatever they are called, is important.
Anyone else? Then I will close this public discussion. And I guess what we're going to leave it with, you're going to try and contact the former committee, and then you will see if we can get them active, and then we will address this at a later date.
Then I think it would be appropriate to, when it comes to that point in the agenda, to postpone, a motion to postpone, and then set a date that we'll revisit it.
Once we have the information from him, because we have no information at this point.
You like to set dates. If you got to postpone it again, you postpone it again, but you like
You
to
like
set
to
dates
set dates.
so that things don't disappear.
Does anyone want to set a date?
Well, when you get there.
But it's the
Okay.
next item. So.
All right, now the
Or
next
maybe not.
item is consideration of a request by the Clausen Lions Club to hold their 24th annual Down on Main Street charity car show.
Madam Mayor, I move the request for the Clausen Lion Club to conduct the 24th annual Down on Main Street charity car show on Saturday, August 13th, 2022, to be approved, and then Main Street be closed for approximately 0800 to 1800 on that date.
Second.
We have Mr. Clive Brown here this evening from the Lions. Would you like to say anything since you've sat through all of this?
I'd be afraid to.
Explain.
If you don't mind my speaking from here, I can come to the microphone, but.
I mean, it depends if you want to be heard.
Yeah, well, it's all good. I mean, if you brought it up, you know what I'm requesting. This is our 24th, so I'm just hoping that, the biggest thing that I'm looking for is that we can get the robotics team at the car show, because that looks like the future car show people.
It's true, very true. Okay, does anyone have any questions? I can tell you, I was really happy to see car show when I looked at this packet, and I was really happy when I saw it today, because that means August, and August is hot, and it's not going to bring us potential snowfall, right? So let's think August and not tomorrow or the next day as far as weather goes. So let's have a roll call, please.
Councilmember Sampson.
Yes.
Councilmember Shepherd.
Yes.
Councilmember Anderson.
Yes.
Mayor Milan.
Yes,
We got a car show.
wonderful. Thank you very much, Mr. Brown, for coming.
Thank you very much for the approval. Appreciate it.
We appreciate
Hope to
it.
see you all at the car show.
Of course. The next item on our agenda is consideration of the introduction and first reading of an ordinance to govern short-term rental units and inspections to provide specific guidelines for same and enact sanctions for violations therein.
So I agree. I think I agree with August that perhaps we make a motion to postpone this item to our agenda.
The two of them?
I'm sorry.
Would that be B and C?
Yeah, do both.
I'll make a
We
motion.
can do both. I mean, if you want to include both, I mean, certainly.
Make a motion, we postpone items 10B and 10C until, pick a date.
How soon do you want this information? Put them put the heat on.
Too close.
I need it by this date.
You will need, if I may, even though we're mid-motion, hold that thought. If I may, obviously, you will want to give the committee a chance to get together, meet, and be able to accomplish something so they may present something. So maybe a couple of meetings from now.
May 30th, somewhere around there.
Kind of our,
When's the meeting?
Second meeting in May.
May 30th.
The other thing too is that I'd like to know where the state legislature is regarding the Airbnb, because that may have an impact on, I mean, it may, right? But I'd like to know where they are, and that should be something that's in the schedule of bills brought up either by the Senate or by the House. I'm sure they're going to, the House is not going to give this one up. So whether the Senate does or not, but I think that's something that at least find out where the legislation is and incorporate that.
I feel like May is really far away, and perhaps we should go for something, maybe March would be a better target. Give them 6 weeks to enact something. It gives plenty of time, a couple weeks to get them together, give them a couple weeks to organize something, and then time to get back to us. And if we have to change the date from there, we change it, but if we
How
go
about April
to
5th meeting? Bring it back on the April 5th meeting. That's the first meeting in April.
Or the second one in March. That's 6 weeks, right?
That's the 15th of March.
Okay, I don't care, whatever. First one in April's good.
April 5th.
Beautiful.
So postpone these items to the April 5th meeting is what I have as a motion. By Sampson and seconded by Shepherd.
Roll call?
Councilmember Shepherd?
Yes.
Councilmember Anderson?
Yes.
Mayor Milan?
Yes.
Councilmember Sampson?
Yes.
We'll see you in April.
Great, so we'll talk all rentals in April. Next item on the agenda would be discussion of the appointment of Attorney Kevin McGinnis to represent the City of Clawson in City of Clawson versus George Georges. So if everyone recalls from the last meeting, we had a little surprise that this decision was taken by administration, and I can say some of us were not necessarily pleased with it. No disrespect to Mr. McGinnis. The way it came about was just it was abrupt and a surprise. So I wanted to put it back on the agenda so we could actually have time to discuss it. I know we discussed it a little bit then, but I want, in all transparency, for him to be able to say what he has done to this date, if anything, and also disclose what his fees are and the process and all of that. And then if anyone has any questions for him, they can ask them today in a calm atmosphere as opposed to the shock and awe that we had the last time. So just trying to do it respectfully so that we address this with the decorum that it deserved the first time around. So Mr. McGinnis is here. Does anyone have any questions for him?
Yeah, what is the status of the lawsuit at this point?
So right now, after the last time I was here, there was a vote to approve me to take over as counsel. And then the next day, I spoke with, I think, Mayor Milan. I spoke with the interim city manager, and then there's confusion as to whether or not what my status was in this case. So I've not officially been retained by the city. I did file a generic, just a base answer, so that we would not default in the case. Again, I've not been retained, so the city's not been billed on any of this. But again, just for me as a resident of the city, I wanted to make sure we had something there. We now have 14 days from yesterday to now file an amended answer with affirmative defenses or any type of counter if we wish to do so. And so if you don't wish to move forward with me, that's perfectly fine. You just have now 13 days to do something else. Otherwise, the city they're not going to be defaulted, but if you want to move forward with anything different than what was currently done. And so that's the status as of right now, is just I've been able to protect the city, at least from that end. I've had the conversation with opposing counsel. I didn't feel comfortable with this notion of not doing anything for the city based on the confusion that I had. And so I did at least go ahead and do something to try to, again, protect the city and protect all the residents of the city going forward.
So in our discussion, no way did I say, we sat here and we actually voted to accept you.
Yes.
Even though it was already a done deal, we didn't need to vote because administration decided that it was okay.
Mm-hmm.
So the reason as far as I think all of us were concerned, you were retained at that point, and it's administration's point to enter into a contract with you that had been done verbally already. So all I wanted to know was, what are you charging us? And you told me personally, but I want you to tell everyone because I think that's full disclosure.
100%.
And then I want anyone to have an opportunity to address questions that they may have had at the time that they weren't able to ask at the time.
And just my comment, Madam Mayor, was not, I wasn't making that in any way to be any disparaging in any way. It was just, I knew after the last time there was a lot of confusion, and that's all I meant, was there's been no signed engagement letter right now. So technically, until there's a signed contract, as an attorney, I generally do not operate under just a verbal, can you do something for me? Because there's a whole lot of malpractice liability. There's stuff that ties onto that.
Right.
And so me taking the step and doing something was kind of going outside of my comfort zone. But again, I wanted to make sure to do something. So I completely understand your point. My hourly rate that I'm going to charge the city, if the city wishes to proceed, is $250 an hour. My normal hourly rate is $350 an hour. And so it's a $100 discount just because I'm a resident of the city. I normally take a retainer in a litigation case of $10,000 up front, I'm taking zero retainer from the city of Clawson. And so I'm not doing anything to try, so again, I'm stepping out of what I normally would do just to kind of move through this. If you want to know what the entire litigation will cost, that's really going to come up to council, and when we start talking privately, and what our strategy is and the strategy that you want me to follow. And so it's an hourly rate. Once we have closed session and we can talk privately on actual litigation strategy, that can get to something. I'll tell you, just like I said, so far everything I've done between my phone calls, between filing the answer, between what I've already done coming here to kind of present, is something that's not being billed to the city. So the city's already received, I think, probably anywhere from $1,000 to a $1,500 discount of my time just from me being here. And so I'll continue to do what I need to do, and I have no problem doing that. But I can't in any way tell you this is the ultimate cost, because that's going to be completely driven by how we decide to litigate the case and continue with the case. My ultimate goal in any case is to try to resolve it as quickly as possible and as efficiently as possible. And I'll be completely frank with the entire council. I want to do it because also I'd like to be able to represent the city on other matters as stuff comes up. So it's like I have no need or no desire to sit here and try to take advantage in any one situation. And so however we can handle it, we can handle it. Again, if you don't want to go with me, there's no offense. I'm not going to take any personal offense to it. I would just say if you're not going to go with me, please find somebody, sooner than later. And I will go ahead and do a substitution of counsel and kind of get out. And I just want to make sure, again, no matter what, the city, at least at this point, we're protected from a default. And so going forward, it's just however you wish to move with this.
So my viewpoint of this was our administration came before us at the last meeting and said, this is what we're doing, this is a done deal. Chaos ensued. We had conversations, and then in the end, for some reason, someone said, should we vote on it? We voted to accept you. So I'm wondering why we didn't pursue a contract so that you felt confident in your position. I know you contacted me the next day.
Sure.
We briefly discussed what happened here, issued apologies on both sides for the surprise and the shock and the awe. You discussed with me how much money you were going to charge, and that was it. And I believe I mentioned to you that I was going to have you come back because I felt like last meeting was not fair to you as a professional, and it wasn't fair to us as professionals either. And I wanted to start this again on a more friendly footing with everybody. Anybody here who has questions, I want them to be able to ask them today too, that were here last time. So under my purview, you were good to go. I mean, honestly, they told us they didn't even need us to make you good to go. You were good to go before you got here. So I'm concerned. Don't look shocked, because why didn't you proceed with a contract with him? Why does he feel like he's hanging in the wind on something that you said he had full authority? You had full authority to do in the first place, and you did without us in the first place. And then we said, oh, we'll bless it for you just for fun. Why?
And if I can just answer that again, as an attorney, anytime there's any confusion raised or any question, even for me, as an individual, and the fact that I knew that I was going to come back here today to answer questions and answer any questions for any of the residents and have them for me and answer to council. Like I said, I moved forward. I had no problem filing an answer to try to protect the city. But I did not feel comfortable myself sending a contract to be signed until the people of Clawson and the council had a chance to ask me the questions and make a decision. So it was not Mr. Newshire, it was not Mr. Sarvello. They would have sent me or done whatever we needed to do. But me personally, once there's any question raised at all, and the way things happened the last time, I felt so uncomfortable when I left here that I felt like I'm still going to take the steps that I'm going to do. I felt comfortable enough to take the steps based on what council did, okay, and what Mr. Newshire and what Mr. Cervello did. I felt comfortable to at least file an answer. But what I did not feel comfortable with is sending a full engagement and really truly stepping in until this happened. And so that was 100% on me. And what I would have done, just because, again, anytime somebody's questioned, it's going to be, and, I appreciate that the council kind of quickly approved me last time, but since I knew I was coming back, and again, we had a very good conversation, I thought, on the phone. I had a very good conversation with Mr. Cervella on the phone, so there was nothing negative. It was just more, in my mind, since there was, this issue of coming back, it seems like, let's come back, let's discuss, let's make sure the residents are comfortable with me, let's make sure the council's comfortable with me, and then I'll send a contract and we'll move forward. But either way, I wasn't going to let the city default. So I chose personally to just say, I'll continue pro bono until today.
So
But that's a personal choice I made based on what I've done here. But after today, however the council decides or the city decides, it's a different avenue. And it's really just, that's 100% on me. So it's not on anybody else.
So that's extremely generous, and clearly you're a generous professional.
Thank you.
Good guy, appreciate that. But you mentioned right off the bat, we have 13 days to do something. And this is a time crunch. And personally, I thought we were engaged, and I'm a little disappointed because that was the whole point of engaging you in the first place, was we're in a hurry. We don't have any time to waste. We have to do this now. We're not going to do it with you people because you can't make a decision. That's pretty much the summary of what transpired during the last meeting. And then here you're saying that you're being cautious and prudent in your decision-making. And are we any further behind than we would have been otherwise? We have 13 days to do.
When I say 13 days, there's, under the court rules, when you file an answer, you got 14 days to file an amended answer without any type of relief from the court. Do I think, after having my conversations with opposing counsel, we'll have any type of issues if it goes beyond that? No. The court rules also say that you can file a motion to amend, and an amendment should be freely given. So you have more time than 13 days. What I'm saying is, my recommendation is, the sooner you find somebody, if it's not me, the easier it is for the city. That's all. So it's not that you're actually in a far better position than you were the last time I was here. And when the city got served, once the city was served, you had 21 days to file an answer or be defaulted. And if by the time I got the phone call and the city was served and it made it through kind of the chain of command to where it got, there was a very limited period of time. So I had made the phone call to opposing counsel to get an extension of that time. And then even with that, I then went ahead and kind of filed to get another extension of time. So by the sheer virtue of me filing the answer, an answer denying the claims that were brought against the city's protected now. So now moving forward, you don't have to amend. I'm not saying you have to amend. I'm not saying we have to do anything else other than continue forward with litigation. What I'm saying is, if we wish to amend the answer, or we wish to bring a counterclaim, or we wish to bring other steps, the sooner is the better, only in just, it's easier. But it does not preclude us from being able to do so. And so when I was here last time, again, like I said, I went ahead, I took the vote of the council, and that's why I moved forward. But then after having conversations and knowing that I was going to be put on the agenda for tonight for review over my appointment, that's not exactly a vote of confidence over, yes, there's been an agreement of my appointment, right? I mean, I think being on a public agenda over that tells me I'm going to take these steps to protect the city based on the conversations, but there was not, I didn't feel 100% confidence that the council and that the city would necessarily 100% want me to move forward. I want to move forward with the city. I want to do that, and I took those steps again to protect the city, and I did all of that kind of myself, and I intentionally did not send over a retainer agreement or a contract to anybody, because once I saw it was on the agenda tonight, if there was no question and no issue, if this was a done deal, then I don't know why I'm here tonight on the agenda. I'm here tonight on the agenda because in my mind, it's not 100% a done deal. People want to take questions, and that's 100% perfectly fine with me. I don't take offense to that. And honestly, that's perfectly fine. And if I was on the agenda last time and I knew that that was going to be the discussion, it would have been probably a whole lot easier for me as well. You know, I mean, because I did not expect what happened last time, but it happened, and that's what happened. So when I saw that, that's why I'm here. That's why I did not send over a contract, despite the fact that after the last meeting, initially, you know, I normally would have sent something over. But it was just after talking to the interim city manager, my conversation with you, which again was a very good conversation, so there was nothing negative. I just realized I'm going to be coming back and taking things open for questions. So therefore, why sign a contract and start charging the city money until I know the city really wants me and wants to pay me the money? Me filing the answer is because, again, I'm a resident of the city and I care about the city. I've done work for the city. So if people have questions specifically, I have no problem answering any questions about my qualifications, about my background, about what I do, about who I am, you know, about what I want to do for the city. When it comes into the specifics of the litigation, I'm going to hold off on answering any of those questions, only because that starts to get into attorney-client privilege, and this is a live streaming event, and I don't want the public, including the individual or opposing counsel who's brought the case against the city, to know exactly what our strategy is, you know, at this point. But anything else, I'm glad to answer any questions at all.
So I'm going to say I apologize if I gave you any indication that I didn't.
You didn't.
Trust that you were going to be our representative.
You didn't.
I was clear when I stated, I was clear last week because I was blindsided and extremely offended by the manner that this thing took place. That's my problem, right? I dealt with it, whatever. Whether they have authority to do something.
Sure.
And the authority and the appropriateness sometimes don't always line up. And last week that meeting they did not line up. So I was, taken off.
You did not, so
We
there's nothing.
voted because we are going to have confidence in you.
Okay.
So I apologize because you took a hit last time, and I felt bad about that personally because you were blindsided like all of us. So the reason I asked you to come back on the agenda was because I wanted it to start fresh, and the people in this community are invested in this, and the people up here deserve to have respect in the process as well, and that's all I wanted. I wanted us to kind of go back to stage one. So if anybody has questions that was here last week, they didn't feel like they could address them, whether people think it's correct or not, I'm going to allow it because I think this is something that's community. It's the whole community. This issue is a whole community, and I want people to be comfortable, and I want people to understand that we're a team, and we're going to work as a team, and people's voices need to be heard because it's not 5 of us, 7 of us, whatever. It's not just the people here whose opinions count. It's our residents' opinions who count in all of the things, and that's one thing I want to try and bridge while we're doing these things, right? None of it's usually fun, except the Robostanks today. This was the best meeting ever. I
was gonna
loved
say.
that. I mean, it was amazing to see Clausen. Like, let's do what we do well for those kids who are growing up here, and for the people who serve Alliance and stuff. Like, we have so many people to be proud of in this community, and I want us to work together and be kind to each other and figure out the process that works and make people as content in the process, not happy, content that we did it the right way. That's all I want.
No.
So saying
100%.
that, does anyone here have any questions for Mr. McGinnis?
Mr. Newshire, you got everything you need to sign an agreement?
I'm allowing the public to ask questions. You can roll your eyes. I get to allow them to. If you have questions, you may ask them as well.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I do have some questions. My first
Keep them
question.
friendly, please.
Yeah, I'm always friendly.
Thank you.
So my first question is that you talked about strategy. And you said with the council. Well, my concern is that 2 people were intimately involved in what happened on November 2nd. So will they have are they going to be part of the strategy?
If you want me to, maybe we can dance back and
Yeah,
forth a little
yeah, we
bit.
can dance
do
back
that
and
if you don't
forth.
mind.
I don't.
The overall strategy will be determined by the council. That's the council. However, what I would like to hope, if I'm going to represent the city, and this is what I would ask, is that my suggestions and strategy is what's adopted and followed by the council. And if I feel that that the city is not willing to follow what I think is the best strategy for the city, then as an attorney, which I do with any client I have, if they don't follow what I think is the appropriate strategy, I step down. And so if I feel like even though we might have people involved, if the people involved or anybody involved or the people not involved, if the strategy they're pushing, I think is adverse to what my client's the city of Clawson. It's also the council, but it's the city of Clawson. And so therefore, if at any point, once we have these meetings, I feel they're doing anything that I think is pushing me adverse to the city of Clawson, I'm not going to continue to represent them,
Okay.
if that makes sense.
Yeah, so, okay,
We'll dance
so,
back.
yeah, so, that puts us, the residents, behind the eight ball yet again, and we have an empty seat. So in the interest of what's best for the residents, perhaps they should recuse themselves from this suit, since they were part of the suit. And while we're on that, about part of the suit, I'm wondering if you could ask, because this is a question of residents.
Sure.
Just to confirm, if we are wrong, we want to know, or if we are right, we want to know as well. So that the evening of November 2nd, we had 2 people up there that were appointed, correct? Appointed. And I don't know if Mr. Nushai can chime in on this, but was their appointment not up November 2nd? So they were then again up there on November 3rd. So can you clear that confusion up for us?
Not to be difficult, because that's not what I'm trying to do.
No, I just want you to tell us
Anything I try to clarify right now, while we're still in the case, and I've still not been actually signed and retained, is a statement I don't want to make because
Okay, I
only
understand.
because it beholdens the city to something
Okay.
and can limit facts in the lawsuit. And so
So-
it's not, again, it's not me being difficult.
No, okay, so could possibly Attorney Nushai answer that for us?
And
Sort of that in private, ma'am, but no, I would
Yeah,
not be
and
able to
Okay,
speak
so
on it.
we'll follow up in private. Okay.
And
got
again,
it. I
that's
understand.
the only thing, again, even for
Yeah.
me, if I'm retained, I would suggest,
I
and my
understand.
recommendation would be to limiting comments regarding the case from anybody not
I
on
understand.
council, but even from the city, only until we move to that
Okay,
that
good.
point. So
Thank you.
That's all.
Thank you. I'll
Again,
follow up
and again,
with
that's not me
Attorney
being
Nushai.
difficult.
No,
I don't
I
want you.
understand entirely. I understand. So I just want to ask something else. So initially, Attorney Nushai and I think you said that this is going to be a fast case. And now I'm hearing litigation and it extending. So what is it? Are we actually going to get into a heavy litigation over what happened? Or is it, and I can't remember the name that is on the amended or on your answer, what you called it, could you tell us what you?
It's a declaratory action.
Yeah, so this is supposed to be something fast. Now, are we?
Faster,
Faster. So now, are we going into litigation? So that would be a question I'd like to know.
Yeah, and again, getting into the strategy of that, first of all, when we talk about the court system in general, I'll tell everybody, when I say something's faster, it means it's faster than normal. The court system tends to move kind of slow, right? I can't control that. I don't control the schedules the judges set or when things move on. This type of action moves faster than a protracted litigation, right?
Yeah.
So when I say that there could be litigation, it's, again, and again, I'm not trying to be difficult. It's just I can't, if I say the full strategy right now, we might have somebody watching on TV that now just sees all the cards on the table, right? Without knowing exactly what we're going to do next. We have the ability, if we want, to turn this into more protracted litigation. That would not be my recommendation in this case in general, unless, once again, I've looked at the facts and the statements, I've looked at the documents. Once I take some additional statements from people and I look at and review some more videos, there might be, I might make a recommendation of certain sorts. But my goal would be, this is not good for the city of Clawson. We need to figure this out. We need this done soon. We need to fill an empty seat and we need to move on. But in that being said, we need to be able to defend as best as we can.
Okay. So my other question, just 2 things I want to say, and I can say them both here so we don't have to keep
Sure.
going back and forth. So I just want to say for mostly the residents, because the last time there was a lot of confusion, and I know that you were offended, but I think it's important that the public knows that, especially in this industry, a conflict of interest is not anything unusual.
No.
And oftentimes, attorneys will recuse themselves immediately because of a conflict of interest. So people bringing that up, nobody should be offended by that, because that's how it basically works. That if anyone thinks it's a conflict, it's not personal. So when people brought up, this is a conflict, it was never anything personal about you, just so people know. It's about, this is how it works. Attorneys recuse themselves all the time without even seeing the case, just because there may be a perceived conflict of interest. So I just wanted to say that. And my last statement is, you're working pro bono now, and you said you did that, okay? So can we assume that the answer and everything you've done thus far is still pro bono?
Yeah, so far, all of the work I've done for the city has not been charged to the
Yeah,
city.
so we won't be charged?
And you will not be charged,
Okay,
even though
I
it's
just-
coming out of my pocket.
Yeah, I just wanted to know.
You're not going to be charged for that, so.
Okay.
And then as for the conflict of interest, just to clarify the point, the reason I take it personally is because anytime I look at a case, I look at every case initially, whether or not there's a conflict, okay? And I will recuse myself or not take a case if there's any type of potential conflict. So to be challenged on that, or to have some of the other questions, is to basically tell me that you're challenging, not you, I'm just saying in general, it's a challenge upon my ability and my ethics in being able to decide a case. So even if the intention's not personal, I think, first of all, I think the city would want an attorney that is passionate about certain things. And I think anybody would want an attorney that takes certain things and can be, defensive. So I will recuse myself. It is not a conflict of interest just because I happen to have met or talked to or have seen any of these individuals on the board, just as it's not a conflict, over the fact that right now, this is the second time you and I have talked. I live in the city, you and I have talked. That doesn't make it a conflict.
Yeah, but can I just say something while we're talking
Sure.
about that? I think you had said about, well, that would be like Phillips. You said, but here's the difference, is that Councilperson Sampson is part of this.
So, but again, I'd like.
But I understand. But they're not. It's apples and oranges.
It's not apples and oranges, and I'll tell you,
Well-
and let me explain why it's not from the legal perspective, all right? And that's why I've said to this council, if from the optical perspective, you want somebody different, do something different. Councilman Sampson, I've never had dinner with him, I've never had lunch with him, I've never met him, outside of just, I've now met every single council person on here. And let me tell you this, have I run into Councilman Sampson around the city before? Of course I have, because I try to hopefully run into everybody around the city, because I spend 90% of my time in the city of Clawson. If I'm not working, I'm in the city of Clawson. Instead of instead of spending my time and money in a neighboring community, knowing somebody does not create a conflict, right? So right now,
Knowing somebody that's part of the suit is where the conflict is, not just knowing.
the part of the suit right now is against the city of Clawson, the entire city council. So I know, I've now had I've already said now on open record, I've had a phone conversation with the mayor. And I'm
know.
representing the mayor as part of the council.
But you do understand, from the perspective of citizens, 2 people up there were involved in what happened November 3rd.
I
So I
understand
just want to
that.
say that, and with that, I appreciate
Yes.
you answering my questions, and I'm done. So thank you very
Okay,
much.
thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone here have any questions?
Anybody else?
I actually have a question. Well,
Come on.
question kind of thing.
Can we dance around
yeah,
too?
good, yeah.
Just do that, sashay a
So,
little bit.
don't want to be in your shoes. It's very hard shoes to be in. Because either way, you're going to have some really happy people or some really angry people, and you still live here. So anyway, from my understanding, you're going to defend council or city of Clawson, right?
Yes.
it seems to me that you will defend based upon the law and how the law is written, right? Not based upon, because there's a lot of emotional charge on all ends of this. People, so is it how you're defending the city of Clawson based upon your perception of the law and whether or not that was legal to take place, or saying that they legally, there's two opposing sides here. To say you're defending one side or the other is kind of like an emotional thing here, right? So I'm assuming that you're just defending what is the law, and by you having a defendant and an accuser, that's probably not the right language. So the accuser, you're saying, is on the other side of the law? I'm just looking for clarification, because obviously we have a split council. Getting them to come to consensus, I think, is what's probably on a lot of people's mind, because it's not happening often. But so you stand by the law versus an emotional split council.
Yeah,
Thanks.
if I can.
Mr. McGinnis, can I
piggyback
on that so I can direct you a little better with respect to this?
Yes.
The actual. Will you explain the difference between legal strategy that attorneys engage in, and is that properly so the role of attorneys?
That's right.
Versus settlement that I think we're talking about, and the ability to settle the case to agree on an outcome, which would be the client.
That's correct. So legal strategy is exactly what you're talking about, which is I'm going to look at exactly what the law is. In that case, you can basically look at me as being completely dead inside, even though I'm not. But it's just, my thought's going to be, and anything I recommend is going to be, this is the law, okay? And there might be things that we did right, there might be things we did wrong, right? I don't know yet, and I'm not going to opine on that at this exact moment, especially in an open forum. If it gets to a point of settlement is then what's best for the overall outcome of the city, irregardless of what the law is. Okay, so there's two different stages to that. So when we're litigating a case and I'm defending a case, every recommendation I make is going to be, this is the law. This is the law in the state of Michigan. Whether we like it or we don't like it, this is the law. And I'm going to say, this is how we are going to proceed with things. This is how we are going to defend things. This is how we're going to litigate things. So that's the legal strategy. And when I talk about how we perceive on things, there's a lot of steps that can be taken during litigation. And it's a choice of, do we want to take those additional steps? Do we as a city want to expend the money to take those steps? And what do I think, for me in making a recommendation, is what do I think the success of us taking those steps are, right? Because the last thing you want to do is do things that are not going to be successful, because that's just it's an exercise in futility. And then when we get to, if we were to ever reach a point of settlement, or when we get to that, settlement is almost a little bit more where you see the emotion a little bit, right? Because that's just how do we resolve an action and kind of put the law aside and just say what's to be done. That's driven more by council and the city. Okay, so when it gets to that point, if at any point I'm offering legal strategy as moving forward, as I said earlier, and council is pushing against what the legal strategy is, then it makes it to where I can't proceed and do my job. So I have to step down because I can't be put in a place where I'm acting against the law. Because as attorneys, and as an attorney, there's a lot of ramifications if I take steps and do things against the law, even if it's what my client wants. And while I love this city a lot, I'm not going to put my license on the line, just to follow the emotions of some people, if that makes sense.
No, I think.
Does that answer your question too, Mr. Nusha?
Yes, I think. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, is everyone good? Does anyone else have anything?
Just so you know, you're all making me feel like a politician right now, which is not what I do. So.
You're not at all acting like a politician. I'd say you're getting good points. You're good.
I just want to know why when Jan Bills asked you about the November 2nd, that you said you'd answer her in private, but not in front of all of us.
And because of the same reason that Mr. McGinnis cannot answer, ma'am, and I have an additional reason, which is I am recused from this case. The opinion that I would offer in private is just a personal opinion on the matter, not a legal opinion on the matter.
Okay. So the November 2nd played a big part in this, but I didn't see that mentioned in the lawsuit when I read it. I might have missed something. It seemed like the whole lawsuit centers around Mr. George's not being sworn in. Well, he wasn't legally put in that position, so he has no right to be sworn in. Are you going to address that if you represent us? The fact that he shouldn't have been sworn in to begin with? Because these people that were in temporary positions ended on November 2nd. Mr. George's getting put into position was November 3rd, and they were not in as members of council at that time. That needs to be addressed before whether or not he was sworn in. So how does that get addressed? And that's all I have to say, so go ahead.
Perfect.
Thank you.
We'll shuffle on.
Thank you.
Again, I don't want to be difficult, before anybody here, but I have to be careful on any of our legal strategy. What I will tell you is, we've defended the action. As part of defending the action, we have denied that Mr. Georges has any right or any claim to be a council member. And so that's part of the entire case. That's part of the public record. As soon as I have the timestamped copy from the court, it'll be sent to council, and everybody will be able to see it. It'll be completely public record. And so that is something that we're doing. The crux of, I think, what we're doing, again, I'm not giving away strategy, is that in our defense, is that he did not have the right to be a council member. Okay?
Thank you.
Yep. Everybody says that. Never easy.
I'm Nancy St. Louis, and my question is, who makes once you make your recommendation, who makes the final decision? Is it just the members of council? Is it also administration? Because obviously we have a council who has difficulty agreeing on anything. So if they are the four who make that decision, I think we're going to have some problems.
Kevin, may I pick it back on that one? So I think the question of the gentle lady, I think, probably gets us in the terrain of settlement and then ultimate decision. If settlement is not reached, how do we get to that ultimate decision? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. So any settlement would have to be approved by the city council. If we reach a point to where the city council's deadlocked and cannot reach a settlement, then we're moving forward with litigation. And that's something that the city would be somewhat aware of as we're going forward. But I'm confident, after watching this wonderful robotics team earlier, that this council can start to work together, and we'll be perfectly fine when we get to this point. But at this point, settlement's not really on our mind, right? Right now, continuing and defeating the litigation's is on our mind. And that's kind of where we're moving.
Can you explain the idea of a motion for summary disposition and how they may play a role in this case?
Yeah. So one of the avenues that we have in any type of court case on either side is something called a motion for summary disposition, which means if there's no question of fact, we can file a motion. And by filing that motion, we can ask the court to say, there's no question of fact, here's the rules, here's the law, here's the fact, find in our favor. And that's something that we always look at. Michigan courts generally do not grant them early on in a case. We generally have to have some discovery, which means we have to have some questions asked, statements, and a little information sought. But this is the type of case, like any case that I take on, where that could be a potential outcome on our end. They could try to file one on their end, and we could have to defend it too. And so that's when I talk about deciding how protracted the litigation's going to go. It all ties into what steps we ultimately take.
Okay, anybody else?
Nobody else, I have one final question, Mr. McGinnis.
Pardon me?
If nobody else has any question, I have an additional question.
Okay.
Obviously, you and I also had conversations with respect to the appointment and some of the doubts that you had.
That's correct.
Now you've heard, obviously, the statements coming from council.
That's correct.
And based on the information that I also provided to you, I'm hoping that you will forward an agreement so that, council may engage you. As I indicated to you, while the appointment belonged to the city manager, your appointment in this case, because you are not one of the 4 positions that council appoints. Council has those 4 positions that start with the city manager, the city clerk, the city attorney, the treasurer, right? And you don't fall within one of those categories. So we have basically a combined effort with the city manager as the CEO of the city, appointing somebody to litigate on behalf of the city on a specific issue, right? Just like we have bond counsel and stuff like that. But at the same time, council's role and why these things come ultimately to council's role being that of having control and authority over the budget, having control and authority over the contracts, right? So now having heard the statements from council, I'm hoping that you will forward that information to us. Obviously, we'll present it to council and they'll sign off on it so that you may proceed in due course and handle this matter. Is that fair?
That's absolutely fair. So so long as council has no other questions for me or no other issues, then I will gladly do so.
Well, I would like to know the time issue. Excuse me, you said we have 13 days before we have to respond, so I'm assuming we have to contract your services before that time.
Yeah, we filed an answer already, and so I'm less concerned if right now I have an agreement before council right now and there's no confusion, I'll get the contract over to you. If for some reason it takes you guys a little bit longer to get back to me, I can act on good faith right now, knowing myself personally that we don't have any confusion. And then if there's any issues, I have no problem discussing them a little bit further. I don't want you as council, especially nowadays with COVID and all kinds of issues that pop up, feeling like you're completely stuck. So I just wanted to make sure when I came here tonight that there was no confusion from any resident, no complaint from any resident, and no confusion from anybody on council.
All right. I guess my question is, can this business wait till the next?
Yeah,
or not?
absolutely. And that's hence the
Yes,
question.
yes.
That's the question.
Yes, it can.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin.
And Mr. Nushai, thank you so much for giving us that brief synopsis of what our responsibilities are. I believe our issue last meeting was not about what our responsibilities are, because we do understand the positions that we have the ability to oversee. We also understood, as the people in this audience understood, that this issue came before council first. Council had the responsibility to determine who was going to be an attorney. We spent way too much time trying to come up with one individual whom could represent this community and this council in a manner that would satisfy everyone to some extent. Now, in all fairness, that did not happen. However, we had stipulations that we wanted, which were part of the problem, that some of us wanted, and those weren't considered, nor was our opinion considered, nor was there a courtesy to say, look, we started out on this lane, but we're moving over to this lane and we're taking control of the car. That was the problem, and I think you're fully aware of that as well. So having that been fun, let's move on to the next issue. Thank you. We're going to go to a really light issue now. We're going to go talk about we're going to have old unfinished business. Last night we had a meeting. We talked about the discussion for the general operating millage ballot question for the May 2022 special election ballot. February 8th, 2022 is the deadline. We have to have information to be submitted in order to get on the May ballot to replace this 3.62 mil that fell off in December, that generates $1.5 million for this community. Without renewing it, we will basically be $1.5 million short of our budget, which we've been relying on for the past 10 years. So saying that, Has everyone gone home, thought about what they want to talk about today? And can we please come to a consensus and give some information to our clerks so that we can file and put this in the residents' hands? Mr. Shepherd?
Yeah, I did some research on other communities that have gone through something similar, focused on what was the success of those initiatives, what was the duration of those initiatives, and what I found interesting, it's a brief survey. It was known in way, was it a scientific one? But I found that communities, for the most part, outside of the metro area, have a much shortened duration than those communities within Metro Detroit. For example, let's see if I can find them. My notes were all over the place as I was going through these. Oops, pardon me. Let's see. East Point in 2010 asked for 2.8 mils. It failed 71 to 29. Madison Heights in 2011, they were going for 1.18 mils for 10 years. It was approved 54 to 45. Howell, back in 2018, asked for 4.5 mils, failed 38.62. That was for 5 years. Charlotte in 2011, and this was what I thought was interesting. It was 0.7087 for 3 years, and it failed by almost 63%. And then one that was most recent that I saw for Harbor Springs, they were asking, I have the detail here. They were asking for 30 years and for 5.8 mils, and it failed. So I think there's something that we need to consider regarding duration. I think there's also a threshold that may be palatable, and I think we talked about it last night. What that is, I don't know. That's what I think we can discuss. But I'm concerned about going out to 10 years. I think it should be shorter. The other thing that we probably should consider on when we land on the expiration, what the possible date might be. I think it was brought up, and I don't remember who brought it up, regarding the political cycle, and depending on the election, whether it's a national election or it's an off-year cycle, what the success rate is. I think that's something that we need to be concerned about. Obviously, the major concern is approving this one. But if we're able to prove it, what can we anticipate having it be at the next go-around?
So although it's interesting to hear what other communities asked for and whether or not it was approved or declined by their voters, that's really not a good representation of what they were requesting money for, why their voters may or may not have said yes, whether those voters typically support millages or don't support millages. I've only lived in Clawson for almost 9, how many ever years? Under 10 years. And I can tell you I don't have the history of the millage acceptance decline here, but from what I understand, this community supports itself. I think our school bond last year was a perfect example of that. Many people that I spoke with didn't necessarily like the plan, but they voted in favor of the plan because they wanted to support the community in any way that they can. So understanding that the school district is critical to a community, right? We need our children to do well. So we have people who will live here with children, and they don't all move out as soon as they have their first baby turn 4 or 5. So saying that, great information, except what does it mean? That's saying, when I was in grad school, statistics. First book the guy told me to read was How to Lie with Statistics. It basically just said any number can mean anything depending on how you put that number together. So not dissing that you did your homework. I'm just saying, let's put our heads in Clawson. Let's look at what our needs are here, and let's look at what the history here is and what our future is here, and make our decision based on that. Mr. Sampson?
What would you be looking for?
I'm gonna ask you what you're looking for, and I will add last. I'm really interested in you. You're next, unless you need to think about it.
I'll think about it.
Okay. Mr. Anderson, while Mr. Sampson's got his thinking cap on.
Well, I've lived here 25 years, and yes, generally the people of Clawson have been very supportive of the millages. The only one I can think that really crashed and burned was a massive infrastructure request they put out like 15, 20 years ago, and then they scaled it back and that passed. But that's been a long time in my memory. So yes, I appreciate Councilman Shepherd looking at those communities, because again, whatever we do here has to pass with the voters. So it is of very little value to come to a conclusion that will then fail when we're put in front of the voters. That said, the operating budget back 10 years ago was a 4.23 mils, and it was for 10 years. So they did it then. I think the people of Clawson are willing to do it again. I think they're willing to live with a 10-year duration. And I think as far as the number is concerned, they went for 4.2 then. They might go for 4.2 now. I guess right now I think what's being requested or advised is 3.7, 3.68. I'm going to call it 3.7. And so that's kind of my thought right out of the gate, is that one of the reasons I'm kind of interested in the 10-year duration is there's a lot of unknowns in the future. And Councilman Shepherd, I respect your concerns about the inflation rate. That is one more variable we've all have to wrestle with in doing future planning. But another thing is our city financial people, they need to have a predictable revenue stream for an extended amount of time. And I think 10 years is not out of the question. I think 20 and 30, I think, is probably a little much. But I don't think 10 years is out of the question. Could we look at something shorter? We could. But the shorter it gets, the sooner we have to go back to the voters for yet another operating renewal. Keep in mind, we've got infrastructure issues. I've read the report. That's a lot of millions of dollars that has to be strategized. We will have to go to the voters for some kind of a bond millage. I'd hate to have those two elections close to each other. So that's why I'm suggesting let's get this off the table, 10 years, 3.7 mils.
Okay, I just want to make sure that it's clear. I do not want this to fail. This is the reason why I'm trying to get to a point where I think may be palatable for the voters. And I really, in taking a look at some of these communities, East Point, Howell, I mean, yes, they're not next to us, but at the same time, you know, these are locations that, given the circumstances, especially at Harbor Springs, I mean, my gosh, it wasn't that much. I guess it was a long duration, but at the same time, some of these communities, you would think that they have had a history of approving these things. I just want to make sure that, given the information that we have right now and the time frame that we have, it needs to be considered on what is the most likely option that we think the community can do. And if you think it's 10 years and the full amount, then I disagree with that. I think it should be shorter. I think the number that you mentioned, 3.68, you know, whatever we can get to that point that doesn't diminish our services, because again, it's clear that the community wants to maintain the level of services that they have, and I don't want to have that be diminished. But at the same time, it's going to be something that they're going to look at, and I don't want to run the risk of having it fail, because it will be a worse situation if that happens.
I respect that. I guess it's just kind of a judgment call. How long a duration do the city of Clawson's residents want? I agree. Sitting here, we can't read their minds at this point. I think we all are in consensus that the level of services need to be maintained. 3.7 appears to be the millage number. Again, I respect the fact, looking around in other communities to see what happened, to get some context. I respect that effort, but I think I would rather almost look at the context of what has Clawson done in the past. 10 years ago, they approved a 10-year duration. I think they're willing to do that again. But I agree with you. I don't want this thing to fail.
I would agree 3.7 right now. I don't want 10 years. So we all agree on the number. I think it should be 5 or a 6 tops. That allows the citizens to have another shot at it later on, in 6 years. If we do it for 10 years now, they don't have a say for 10 years. So let's do it for 5, at your number, let's get it done today. I think that way, 5 years from now, that's a long time, we'll know more about what's going on.
Kelly, would you weigh in on this for us, please? I appreciate coming to consensus on the number. So if we go for the let's use 3.7 that's discussed here today, if we're talking, we have to consider rollbacks still.
Correct.
So based on, I'm going to ask you I'm going to ask you what ifs. So based on projections of what's happened in the past, or what has happened in the past, and perhaps a projection on the future, if we start with the 3.7, where do you think ideally we might be in, say, 7 years or 5 years, as far as rollbacks go? How detrimental could it be? Would it be devastating to us?
My guess would be about a 3.0 mil. That's a guess.
Yeah, so then that would be?
That would be approximately $500,000 loss.
Okay, $500,000 loss is a few police officers, and, I mean, if we're talking staff, right, that's 3 staff members and I don't know, building cuts that they don't have a lot of in the first place. I mean, what the importance, of course, would be education to our community. The important thing is, although this isn't a renewal, we can't call it a renewal because it recently dropped off. It is a continuation of funds that have already been allocated. So we're not technically asking people for an additional roughly $250 per household because we've already been paying that roughly $250 per household. So if we market this in that manner, it's not an additional, right? So that's important for us, I think, to say we're not going out to try and get more out of you than we've asked from you in the past. We're trying to maintain, and this is how we're maintaining. By having you maintain your portion, we'll maintain the business that we do on our side. So if we're talking, 5 years doesn't sound long enough to me to start this all over again, to have this conversation, to force people to have this conversation all over again. If we have a need for this money in our operating budget, then we need to just address it and go for it and capture it now instead of going back and forth to the residents, because the more times you go back to the residents, they think you're not really planning ahead, right? I mean, that's what I would think. If you're going to ask me for something for 5 years and then 5 years later ask me for the same thing, I want to go, why don't we just take care of this and just be done with it, you know? So I would say the longer the better, but that's my perspective. And when I'm managing my own future, I want to go long range. I don't want to go short range. And I don't want to put the burden on another council. We have serious issues to deal with. I would like to put this to bed and then get our budget together, and I would really love for this council to be the council that finally addresses the roads and the sewers. And it's not going to be pleasant. People aren't going to like to hear how we're going to actually need more money from them, but we do, because even this, it doesn't give us that cash flow we need to address the streets and address the sewers. So I'm asking that we think down the future and be proactive on this so that when we're going forward with those more important issues, that we have the people's confidence and trust.
Well, it looks like we have an agreement on the millage, 3.7. We just need a time frame now. How's 7 years now?
Well, let me ask you this. So by the time that this goes on to the ballot in May, there is no rollback effective for 2022. Is that right?
For the first year, if it's voted
Okay.
and approved, yes.
All right. So then there will be additional rollbacks each subsequent year.
Correct.
Okay.
With not only this millage, but our charter operating millage as well.
Okay. So that really a shorter time to address it is better than a longer period of time.
No.
Okay. So what I'm saying is that if you've got 1 year that you don't have a rollback, right, you'll have
Correct.
additional rollbacks in
That's today.
23, 24, 25, and so on, right?
Correct.
Okay. So at some point in time, and I'd love to see the chart on what that demonstrates, right? Based off of 10 years or 5 years.
I don't have that information. It's not projected. I wasn't able to obtain any future projections from the assessor. I looked on state of Michigan revenue estimates and wasn't able to get any information there. It is all projections.
Yeah, and it's-
The better, the more we are able to have a number set for the budget, we can project ahead 5 years, and we will be able to see what we may need in 5 years. 10 years is good for me, but 5.
5's good, okay.
And then, would you recommend that we go higher than the 3.7?
My
And not by a
recommendation
lot,
would
but-
be the 4.2 that we initially did 10 years ago.
Okay. And
Well, that would
Because
help.
of the rollbacks.
Yeah, that would, the 4.2 would help mitigate some of the rollback
Correct.
effect. So, are we comfortable with 4.2? You're not, Glenn? You're not? Okay. So 3.7, looks like we're, Madam Mayor, are you comfortable with that number?
with 3.7, if that's as high as we can get. I mean, I'd like to give us the opportunity to, this is used for general operating funds. Like this, the problem of the need of this money is not going to go away. And then knowing that we will have less and less every year after the first year does not mitigate the fact that we will have, we're going to have less money. We won't necessarily have less expenditures, but we'll have less income. So that doesn't help.
Yeah. The only hope there is the taxable value hopefully will go up, but that's another projection, right?
That is correct.
Do we do it for 5 or 7?
I'm not comfortable with 5 years. 5 years is not far enough out. I just don't think that makes sense. I would go maybe 7, but I think 10 is wise. Like, why don't we just do what the professionals say and go 10? I mean, it's just a good number. It takes this off the plate for other people. It doesn't change what they're doing now. It's the same for people. We're providing people with stability of the costs.
They may want it off the plate in 7 years, 5 years.
They might want to have the opportunity to review it again.
Yeah.
Okay, well
That's
then,
that.
will you enjoy the conversation when we, or whomever's sitting here in that time, says we can no longer afford this, and this, because that is what's gonna happen. You're trading one thing for the other. I mean, what are you willing to give up is the question on this, 100%.
But we're talking about projections, we're hoping it all comes out pretty good. Would you go with 6?
No, I won't. I'll go with 8.
No.
I'd go with 6.
Would you go with 6?
I like 7.
I know, I like 5, so.
I mean, I like it. I like it as a compromise. I mean, I prefer 10.
I'll make a motion, go ahead. 3.7, 6 years.
I could do that. I just want to.
Go ahead. Let's see how it works out and plays out. This is the closest we ever come to getting along.
Well, it's because you're dictating the term, so of course we're getting along.
No.
So, yeah, you're getting the number you want and you're getting the term you want. So if this goes as is, so of course it's a good thing. I just implore you to think on behalf of the people who do our budgeting, on behalf of the residents and the ease of not having to come back before them. I don't think it's wise to go back before a community every 3, 5, 7 years to ask them for money. That's what they remember. They remember that you just asked them for money. So going out 10 years on something that we are already paying for is much less harmful than going back and forth. That's why that's why communities say no, because you just asked me for money. Why are you asking me for more? Why didn't you plan ahead? And that's simple to me, at least. So that's why I'm asking you to go longer term for that. If you want to cut the cost to 3.7 and give us a little bit of extra less money, so be it. But I just implore you to take the longer term so that we don't have to go back to the residents and ask again. It does not show sound leadership to go back and forth.
Well, now 6 years from now, we really got to look at it again. That's a good thing when you really got to look at it. If you go, I got another 4 years, I don't have to look at it so closely. It makes even that council have to look at it.
I like 10.
Well, I'll be honest with you. I'm living kind of in the here and now, and I'm not so concerned about what the future council has to deal with. We're kind of out of time, so we have to reach a decision.
Again, I brought up, examples throughout the state. It seemed that 10 years is, and again, from what I found within Metro Detroit, 10 years didn't necessarily, of the 4 communities I found, one was 20, and that failed. And we have others that are at 4 years and 5 years throughout the state. So that's not uncommon. Now, again, things change. And not to be able to be dynamic enough as a community and under address something at that point in time and say, well, we can't deal with that for another 6 or 7 years. Just because we don't want to deal with it, that's irresponsible.
The point is, we want to deal with it. We want to deal with it and not burden someone else with having to deal with it. And it's irrelevant what other communities did or didn't do because the parameters are never the same. We don't know why they asked for money. We don't know if they asked them for money last summer or 2 years ago or 4 years ago, or they did something like this and said, we'll give you 5 years on something. 5 years is up, we're asking for it again. That's annoying. That is not good planning. Let's be good stewards and plan appropriately. Ask our residents once and move on. Let's do that. So I'm going to propose 3.7 for 10 years.
I'll second the motion.
Roll call, please.
No, I'd like to amend your motion
Discuss.
to 6 years.
6 is not enough. It's not enough.
I just made a motion to amend.
I made a motion too, and it was seconded, and you interrupted us.
Well, because that's how you work. If we can get a second.
We have a
on
motion,
this one.
3.7 for 10 years, correct?
Correct.
That was your motion, seconded? Sorry,
Yes.
Okay.
And it was amended to 6.
No, it's,
Well, you made a motion to
not
amend.
amended.
the motion, it's a
Motion to
motion
amend.
is seconded, I don't think you can amend it.
Motion to amend. Now, if somebody seconds the motion to amend,
Yeah, I second the motion to amend.
Okay, we'll take a vote on the motion to amend then.
Oh, I'll make an amendment. I'll make another motion to amend.
oh, we got to keep a track of this one.
Raise your hand if you want, if you would prefer for the residents to come after you every 5 years for a millage, or if you would prefer that we come after you once and leave it alone for a while. Raise your hand if you want it one time.
Make it 7.
Look around, people. Please raise your hand if you'd prefer every 5 years. This is a representative of our community right here. These are people who pay attention. You don't even live here. Well, yeah, right.
I understand.
Good news.
So, I'm sorry, are we voting for the amended motion?
Yeah.
Or the,
This is the amended motion.
And if it fails, or if it, then you
which
vote on.
is 6 years?
Yes.
Okay, no.
Well, I'll do the roll call on that one. So it's Councilmember Anderson?
No.
No. Mayor Milan?
No.
Councilmember Sampson?
Yes.
Councilmember Shepherd?
Yes.
Motion fails. So the original motion, 3.7 for 10 years.
I'll make a motion 3.7 for 8 years.
You have to vote
You're
still on the
amending-
original motion,
Yeah,
right?
we'll vote on the original
Oh.
motion. If it fails, then
Oh,
you can
sorry,
go
I
next
forgot.
one. So
Yeah.
that's,
So hard.
I'm writing it down, trying to, keep it going here. Okay. Mayor Milan? 3.7
Yes.
for 10 years.
Yes.
Councilmember Sampson?
No.
Councilmember Shepherd?
No.
Councilmember Anderson?
Yes.
That fails.
Thank you. I make a motion 3.7 for 8 years.
I'll support that.
Motion by Milan, supported by Sampson. Any discussion?
I'm ready.
Sorry. Could you repeat the motion just so I've got it?
3.7 mils for 8 years.
Thank you.
Call the vote, okay. Councilmember Sampson?
Yes.
Councilmember Shepherd?
No.
Councilmember Anderson?
Yes.
Mayor Milan?
Yes.
We move forward.
Thank you very much. Thank you, residents, for weighing in. I do actually think you're a representative of our community. Everyone's not the same in this community, and that is the beauty of it. So, thank you very much. Next thing we have on the agenda is public comments for items not on the agenda. If anyone cares to speak, you know the drill. Please come up. Thank you. Thank you.
Susan Moffett, 726 Strand. I just want to make a comment. We hear a lot about divided council and council not getting along. And I just want
to refocus everyone's attention on the root cause of all that dissension is George Georges's refusal to resign, and that if he would put the city first instead of his own personal desires and needs, that would be a huge step forward to this community and this council coming together. So I again say that George Georges should step away from the process, resign, end his lawsuit, so that this council can begin to heal, so the community can begin to heal, because that is the only way forward for us. That's all I got.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak?
Andrew Hodges. Hey, I'm sure none of you guys know this, but 10 years ago, this company named SRF actually went through our entire system, cleaned our sewers, and also cameraed them. That was 10 years ago, and it cost around $1 million. So just think about nowadays it's going to cost a little bit more. And one more thing, I'm a little confused. He did say there was 3 water employees in that account. On the budget for the water and sewer department, $624,000 is budgeted for that. So if there's 3 employees, does that make it they're making over $200,000 with their salaries and their benefits? Because all that money goes towards them, so I'm a little confused. If, as he said, that there's some employees that go in that department, that's FTEs, so if you guys are doing it, that's great, because then you're going to be able to tell us exactly how much everything costs, because you'll be able to put those employees in those departments and have the supporting documentation showing that those employees are spending at least 60% of their time in those departments. So I think that's great if you guys are doing that, but again, I am a little confused if there's 3 employees in the water department and you're paying them $624,000 a year. It's a little scary. Thanks.
Anybody else have anything wonderful to add?
Yes, I'll be brief. I guess I'll echo Ms. Moffitt's comments about trust. My reason for talking at this point is on trust. I'm concerned deeply at the functionality of the council at this moment and the lack of trust the community has in it. That's reversible. It's an option for Mr. Georges to resign, as Ms. Moffitt said. It's an option for you all to help do everything you can, and I'm speaking to 2 members of council specifically, to end this lawsuit with Mr. Georges, fill that seat, and demonstrate that the community can trust you. It's comical to see you guys argue about this millage, thinking that you can manipulate these things and you can buy the trust that you seek. It's not so, but if you do the right thing, it is possible for the community to trust you a lot, and I'm sure it will have a much more likely success when it is elected. So a motion was made on November 3rd. It was seconded, and it put us on a collision course with the situation we are in now, where we are in endless legal purgatory, with no end in sight and obvious division in its path. So I ask for you to please reconsider your role in this and to look at the future, look at those kids you saw today and say, you both can be part of the solution. You can put these lawyers away and we can move forward. I will be the first to honor that decision and the first to forgive you for what happened. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello again. This is Donna Hughes. I have just 3 comments, and I'm not sure who to address them with, but first comment is I really like the alerts that are sent over social media by the police department and the Department of Public Works. They are extremely helpful, and if there are other departments doing this and I did not mention them, I apologize. The second comment is that I would like the City Council to consider reviewing the Water Department billing issues as were brought forth by Reese Scripture. If there is a possibility that I, as a resident, have been paying a portion of business water bills, I would really like to know that. My third comment, it's really a small thing, but it's really much bigger than it appears. We consider ourselves a little city with a big heart. All the city employees, as well as all of the residents, would need to have pride in their city. The downtown area, the parks, the schools, the municipal buildings, the structures have pride in the employees and the residents themselves, as the heart of a city is its people. If I see something that needs to be done or fixed as I travel around within the city, I will get out of my car and move that garbage can, pull those weeds, or pick up the trash from the ground as I pass. I have noticed right across the street here, there's a huge pile of concrete and asphalt. I can't move that. That's not something I can do. And I don't know where that came from, who put it there. Is it going to be removed? If so, when? It's just too big to ignore. The other little issue that's really a big issue is there's a construction or a traffic sign that is not upright on East 14 Mile Road near Pear Street. The sign is not upright, the legs are in the air, the sandbags are covered in snow and invisible. That's a hazard to anyone walking in the area. My question is, was that sign put there by the county, by the city, by Royal Oak when they did the construction down on 14 Mile Road? I don't know, but it's been there for 3 months, knocked over or put over, I'm not sure which, but no one has corrected the situation. Once again, I can't do that because my car isn't big enough and I'm not strong enough. But I wonder, I know that there's city employees in vehicles that drive by there. You know, has anybody seen that or looked at it or thought, this is something in my city that needs to be fixed? It would be nice if ownership was taken for the removing of objects that don't belong or are hazardous to people in the anyone commuting in the area. Ultimately, who is going to take pride in how the city looks? Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, next thing on our agenda would be the city attorney's report. Mr. Newshine?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, just very briefly, I wanted to just report my sincere thanks and gratitude to Mr. McGinnis. Thank you for obviously taking on this matter. I know you agree with me that it's important. I know you agree with me that this little city deserves it, and I know that you agree with me that it should be brought forth to a speedy conclusion for all the reasons that were displayed here tonight, because it is one of those issues. Nothing further. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Chief Engel, do you have anything as our acting city manager that you'd like to report upon?
To answer your question, I think that sign was there when the gas company dug up the gas main because we had a gas leak in the sewer system. And I noticed it the other day falling over. So I think the wind blew it over. I'll see if I can find a consumers guy, like the guy that lives across the street, and ask him if it's their sign. It should be labeled. We can get rid of it. Because I was confused why it was still there. It should have disappeared when they finished the work. That road was closed, the sidewalk was closed. It was a much larger job than I think they thought it was going to be. I do. So a snow emergency will be issued effective at 11 p.m. tonight until 11 a.m. on Friday to allow proper cleaning of the streets. If we get the snow that we're supposed to. It's the weathermen, so the only job I know where you can get paid. A public meet and greet for the city manager candidates will be on Monday, February 7th from 5:30 p.m. until 18:15. Does that suit you, Master Chief? In the community room for City Hall. Department heads will meet with the candidates prior to that day. Scott hasn't sent out the exact times, but I'm sure his department heads will get together and meet the candidates early that day. And unless anyone has any questions for me.
Does anyone have any questions for our wonderful Chief Engel? No?
Thanks for filling in. We appreciate it.
Not a problem.
Next would be city council comments. Councilmember Shepherd?
I just want to commend again the students from Clawson Middle School. And I know that there are other organizations that are part of Clawson Middle School, and encourage anybody with students to help them participate in something as wonderful as that, as engaging, because that is part of a responsibility of a community to provide that. I'm glad that schools have done that. I'm glad that's part of the broader expansion of the schools for from the bond proposal, and encourage, again, getting your kids involved and having them come here. Maybe next time they'll be able to sit here and be educated on the civic responsibility that we have. So, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Sampson?
Yeah, I got a question for Kelly. The audit done? Did we get it back yet?
No.
When do we get it? I thought it was supposed to be this week.
I'm still waiting to hear back from the auditors. I contacted them last week, and they're finalizing it all, and their chief auditor is reviewing it.
When did they say would have it? You know?
They did not give me an exact date. Within a couple weeks is what their statement was last week.
Okay. The only other thing I got is, I don't know, I wish the chief was there, but have we met the deadline for Harry Dornquine's investigation for his retirement by the IRS? Have we met that first deadline? There was 14 days for us to contact the, have we?
We have contacted the IRS agent, yes.
Okay. Have we notified the other players in the thing that were former city man, whoever signed that agreement? Have we notified them? It'd be probably Mark.
First step obviously is to contact and speak with the IRS agent that has contacted us, to send a letter over to the city, which we have done. In the letter, she indicates that she will then outline the process and how we provide the information that she seeks.
Okay.
So first we got to figure out the process, and then, obviously we follow.
I hate missing one of their dates because when they send you something, they usually already won.
No, sir, I spoke to the IRS agent, and she said those dates were going to be inconsequential because it was a form letter, and it didn't get to us because of the mail, way late. And I said, that's my biggest concern. When I finally got her on the phone with a lot of phone tag, she said, disregard the dates, let's just work together moving forward. And that was the conversation we had end of last week. So we're on it.
Good.
Anything else?
Yep.
Councilmember Anderson,
Sorry. I didn't hear you, I'm sorry.
do you have any comments?
No.
Oh, good answer. So I would like to thank Mr. McGinnis for answering great questions today and for being positive. I have great confidence in you, and I really appreciate your willingness to work on behalf of our community and also be gracious about it. I'd like to thank Kelly and Trevor for providing information for us this evening, and for Kelly for answering 100 questions this week regarding all things millage and everything else that we've been going through. I would like to say thank you to this council for making a determination that was nobody's final preferred anything, but we can send this to the residents and let them decide how they want to move forward, because ultimately it's their decision. I thank you for working with that today. I want to thank in advance the DPW, Fire, Police, Parks and Rec, and people here at City Hall who will be fielding issues due to snow in the next coming days, should we actually get what those people say we're getting. But I personally am hoping on the other side. I love when they're wrong. I love when they get everyone scared and you go out and get your shovels and your salt and stuff, and then it's nothing. So that's what I'm hoping for. And if it turns the other way, don't call me and say, ha, because I'll be sad enough about it. It's all right. We'll all deal. And then I want to thank everyone who's here tonight. I really appreciate anybody who came this evening who shared something positive, shared their own personal concerns, because they all matter. So that wraps up our meeting now, except we're considering going into closed session to consult with our city attorney regarding the legal matter of City of Clawson versus Gerald Hare, pursuant to Section 8E of the Open Meetings Act, as well as Section 13(1)G of the Freedom of Information Act.
Mayor, I move to go into closed session to consult with the city attorney regarding the legal matter of City of Clawson versus Gerald Hare, pursuant to Section 8E of the Open Meetings Act, as well as Section 13(1)G of the Freedom of Information Act.
I'll second it.
Councilman Shepard?
Yes.
Councilmember Anderson.
Yes.
Mayor Milan.
Yes.
Councilmember Sampson.
Yes.
So we're going to go
Close at
into
10:10.
closed session. We will go have our conversation, and we will come back here to close the meeting. If you'd like to stay to hear whatever we come back to say, you're welcome to. If not, go out, be safe. Just go out and be safe. Thank you.
Just get out there.
As a snow till 6.
Hey, Troy.
248, right? 914.
Okay, we are back. It is 10:30 something, and we are returning.
10:33.
We are returning from our closed session with our attorney discussing a legal matter, City of Clawson versus Gerald Hare. And someone going to, Attorney Newshire, would you like to?
Mr. Anderson will make the motion if he can read my handwriting.
I think I can. It's a test. All right. Make a motion to authorize city attorney to accept and sign the proposed consent judgment in the case of Clawson versus Hare.
Support that.
Roll call.
Mayor Milan. Councilmember Sampson.
Yes.
Councilmember Shepherd. Yes. Councilmember Anderson.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, I
Make a
will
motion to adjourn?
entertain a motion to adjourn. Stop taking my thunder.
Sampson.
Yes.
Yes.
You guys act
Anderson.
like you don't even like it here or something. I'm not gonna answer. You guys don't even play nice.
Motion to adjourn.
Keep from going home. Yes,
Yes. We're adjourned at 10:34. Thank you, everyone.
thank you. Thanks, everyone. Have a good night. Stay safe.
Meeting sometime.